to our country and your continued service as civilians. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it very much. Alrighty. Oh, look at that. We do have retired Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi. Just announced your potential absence. Thank you, sir, for joining us from Australia.
Thanks, John. Pleasure to be here.
Beautiful. Excellent. All right. So we are all convened. There is so much going on. We were chatting in the proverbial digital green room, if you will, a moment ago, sir. And while I have 5 specific subjects I want to focus on in this broadcast, anything else that you feel is important, because it's crunch time right now, for the people to get your views on, add it into the conversation. It's please, by all means. So these are the several different subjects that I want to get to our viewers, just so you know where we're heading in the next 90 minutes or so. We're going to discuss James Comey. We're going to discuss Christianity under attack and what's going on there. We're going to discuss the move recently, of course, from President Trump through Pete Hegseth, Director of, so used to saying Defense, Secretary of War. We're going to discuss goings on in the UK and United Nations speech. We're going to connect the dots on the geopolitical shuffle. And we're going to talk about Bibi Netanyahu and President Trump and what just took place, invoking, of course, Q's statement, save Israel for last. I'm curious to dive into that notion a little bit further. All right, so let's begin. A grand jury has indicted James Comey on 2 counts, false statements to Congress and obstructing proceedings, pretty much the similar charges that General Mike Flynn received back in the day. Interesting. Comey's arraignment is set for early October. How do you see this situation playing out? What maneuvers do you think Colonel Sellers are taking place, either overtly and covertly, with the indictment and potentially arrest, I sure hope so, of James Comey? What do you see going on here?
I think it's long by a bunch of us that this needed to happen, and I think it's the first domino. Comey's going to be the first domino, but he's not going to be the last. And it's interesting that you mentioned the way General Flynn actually mentioned on the phone this morning that he was attacked that way, in a similar way as that. And I remember that in depth, how that was going on. So I just think it's the first domino in a long train of dominoes that's getting ready to happen. And I think they know it.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. I've been speaking with a lot of different folks, and that seems to be a consensus. Before we take this question around the panel, Colonel Sellers, I'd like to have a follow-up on that. Do you think that Comey has been already in rooms speaking with those in charge over a period of time, and now this is just sort of surfacing to follow through in the optics? In other words, a nice way of saying perhaps some kind of deal has been cut. Not that he's going to run free, but something took place already, or are we watching this in real time?
I think something's happened already, personally, and I don't think he's the only one that things have happened with already. Because the thing that I do believe is that they're playing this thing out very well. We mentioned it on the last show a month ago, that the things that are happening are very well scripted, very well organized, and I believe, to go back to it, I believe it's a campaign plan that's being executed and has been in place for quite a while.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. And I got the visual of a stack of dominoes when you first answered the question, and this is what we're going to start to see coming down the pike very soon. It's good news. Same question to the panel. Welcome, Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi. You want to take that subject on, please?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the first one. It's not the one I expected, but it's a clever play, because this is the thin edge of the wedge, and it's going to crack open slightly. So this is opening the door now for the show, the movie, the reveal. Nobody would have believed a catastrophic failure of every arm of government in one day. And so it's going to play out, as everybody knows. Everybody around the table knows the game here. But this is that thin edge of the wedge, small crack. And now, well, Comey will reveal this, Comey will reveal that. More names will come in. They'll start eating their own. So this is the that final phase of the story, but it's going to be a very engaging one and credible to the people watching the show, because it's going to take a while. It's going to come quickly, but it has to be sequential in order for them to grasp the enormity of it. And as everyone around here has said, this is a repeat of Mike Flynn. And once again, you've got that predictive programming. It happened before, therefore it can happen again. There's no psychological shock. Yes, we expected this. At some point, they might even say he was an FBI deep cover agent. I'm just joking, but that's the way it's going to go. And to the second part of your question, I believe that yes, this has already been done. This is in the can, so to speak, and they're now rolling the episodes out as they need to.
Thank you. I don't think the average American who's awake, to use that term, has a soft spot for James Comey in their hearts. And I see a lot of boomerangs flying around. There's so many boomerangs flying, you got to duck these days. One of them is no one's above the law. So let's remember that, Mr. Comey. Same question to Michael Jaco. Thanks for being here, Michael.
Yeah, so I remember when Comey was talking about Hillary Clinton, all of the crimes that she had committed, and I was like, this is amazing, because he was just outlining all these crimes. And I was like, she is going down. And then when he said that we've reviewed everything and we're not going to press charges because of this. And I was like, what a criminal. Unbelievable. So I was like, yeah, your days are numbered, dude. And sure enough, here we go with, James Comey, now after many years, getting ready to be indicted. He goes in, I think, October 9th. So it's coming up very quick, 9 days from now. And we're going to see this domino effect, like we're all talking about, start to unravel for a lot of these people. I think behind the scenes, a lot of these people have already been dealt with. This is part of the show for the normies. We all pretty much know it's already been, handled for a certain level. But there's still a lot of work to go on. A lot of reveals are coming in. 274 FBI agents were at J6. Now I was there that day, and I saw that there were some very suspicious people in the crowd. I felt that there was deep state involvement and all kind of crazy stuff. And then I went to a court case where this one poor woman, grandmother, was basically FBI had done this investigation against her in the Capitol, and she was convicted, which was incredible. And she was going to go to jail. Fortunately, President Trump came out and said, J6ers, you're basically, you're pardoned. And so she was supposed to go the next day to jail, and she didn't. So, the FBI has lost a lot of credibility because of James Comey, and a lot of people like him. He's going to try and say, oh, Obama told me to do that, and, try and, escape justice. He's got I think a Biden appointed judge that's over him. We're not going to see justice, not in that system. So I believe, like we saw today, where President Trump and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, basically their whole speech was like domestic. So you're going to see domestic activity in America, and our military is going to get involved very heavily in that. And I think we're going to see military tribunals on a massive scale. So Comey will probably go to military tribunal at some point.
Great, thanks. That was going to be my follow-up. I had two-part follow-up, so I'll go there real quick. So you do, because, in the civilian courts, we know, because we've got to clean out the justice system in our country, particularly a lot of judges in various levels, in order to get any justice and stop having barriers thrown in our way. But you're indicating then that you think this case will end up over in military tribunals because of the status of James Comey and the potential results of his crimes. Is that correct, Mike? You see it moving over there?
Yeah, it's not
tribunals versus civilian court.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Well, that's good news, because I know a lot of folks listening right now. Go ahead.
There's not going to be any justice in civilian courts. It's already been proven. Otherwise, all those people, Hillary, Bill, all those guys would have been, basically justice would have taken care of them long ago. So that system is corrupt. It's been proven to everybody. If he goes into that system, that means business is normal, and we're not a business as normal anymore. We're way beyond that now.
Yes. Thank you. I'm glad you laid all that down, because I know that's on the minds of everyone listening right now when it comes to James Comey and all the rest to follow. Thank you. We're going around the panel. Derek Jonhson, if you want to weigh in, Derek.
Well, I always bring in the laws and orders of this, right? As we all know, it's theater. It's playing out for the normal people because they got to get involved, because there's no way we could have sustained the future looking like we've always looked from days of old. That is what makes 45-47 unique and different, is that line in the sand, draining the swamp. And so theater, especially for all of us, but for the normal, what I call the target audience, since if we want to show any compassion, we'll use that instead of the word normie. But Jaco and I, we love that word normie. But we'll use the target audience. But restricting telecommunications. Look, my dad, he just turned 83. And it was so hard to convince him, even him being military, and he had clearance back in the day. It was hard during 2020 to convince him what was going on with the operation, because what did he come back with? He was like, oh, we have laws and orders. We've always had laws and orders. They've never been enforced. And I'm like, are you a Trump man or not? So I had to call out my own dad, right? I said, are you a Trump man or not? Yes. I said, okay, then there's a new sheriff in town. He is laying the law down, but it's going to be in increments. The domino effect, sometimes faster, sometimes slow. It's like those little games you see where they'll set up those boards where the dominoes will go faster, and it's got another little thing that trips, and then it goes slower. So the restricting telecommunication, if it was the days of old, like my dad had witnessed, and most people have, every one of us before 2016 knows this, it would be dog eat dog. If your name was in any kind of Russia collusion or DNI of the Russia Gate, whatever side it was on, you'd see a lot more mudslinging and dog eating. You're not seeing that, right? You're not seeing Obama defend himself. You're not seeing Hillary defend herself. You're not seeing any of that. You're seeing some normal stuff. The normie target audience is. But Comey hasn't. I just checked a while ago. I wasn't trying to be rude to the panel, but I was looking one more time to see when his last post was on X. It's still June the 10th. Does that sound like someone whose name is being indicated with anything? No. But what have the normie and target audience seen? They've seen a video of Comey talking. He was talking about his daughter being fired. Why doesn't he post that on his own X account, right? So it shows you that they have been detained. This is all theater for others. And it's that old saying I heard Jaco say, but it's kind of, the Navy has this term, don't give up the ship. Well, you can know and you can bet that when all these people were detained, somebody gave up the ship because they didn't know which one was going to hold their weight whenever they were detained. So somebody gave up the ship and they gave up everything. And we're going to see all that play out. But it will be in a military theater, military court, because the continuity government already shows that none of these courts were real. All the stuff with President Trump, that was all just for distraction pieces to get to this point. And that's why people are seeing the generals. I know we're going to talk about that later, but that's why people are seeing all this stuff happen in a sequence, as Lieutenant Colonel said, sequential.
Thank you. Yeah. Derek, what comes to mind is I think it was Juan O'Savin I spoke with last week on a different broadcast, who said that he believes that the Comey family was relocated about 2 years ago out of their home. So that's kind of interesting, dovetailing into things have perhaps been going on for a while concerning James Comey. So same question to Brad Wozny. Thanks for being here, Brad. You're in your home country of Canada, correct, right now? Oh, we have no sound, sir. We don't hear you.
Thanks very much. What we thought was country, John, as all the men here on this panel know, it is veterans, that it's registered in the SEC in Washington, D.C., never been a country. It was nice to see the king of the Western Kingdom today with what he put out there. Sheila Holmes and Mike did a great job on a show earlier.
One moment, Brad. Can you raise your volume? And to our producer, work it on both ends. Let's see if we can get your volume's about 40% down. It's a challenge.
So if I start singing the national anthem, would that help for Jessica? All right, right on.
That works right there. That volume level works.
Okay, copy that. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. You know, the Comey situation is great to inoculate the rest of the world to the fact that there's going to be treason trials, and then we're going to have the vaccine crimes against humanity trials, and then we're also going to have the crimes against children trials, not only just for the smuggling and the trafficking and adrenochrome of children that goes back generations. And it, coincidentally, and not serendipitously whatsoever, today is the Day of Atonement in Canada, you know, where Trudeau's foundation put out the mantra, every child matters. We know what that Trudeau's foundation is tied to in child trafficking, drug trafficking, fentanyl, and the crime. As we've seen in the US and throughout this continent, 35.6%, as reported by CSIS, of Canada's population in the last 10 years has all been imported. So that's millions of people. And so this inoculation point for Comey's indictment, the whole world is watching that. I think it's great too, where now with Clinton's coming up, that nobody can escape the military justice and the tribunals. And it's unfortunate to see an experience that we just had at the Universal Ostrich Farms, which if any of the Americans or the Aussies don't know, and I'm sure Rick definitely knows as well, what just happened. 7 days ago today, we had the RCMP, counterterrorism, PRT, the emergency response team rolling with the mobile command unit, helicopters, surveillance drones, RF jammers closed the airspace with the issue to no tail. To close the airspace, reported 140 RCMP vehicles and 200 heavily armed officers to terrorize a grandmother, her paraplegic husband in a motorized wheelchair, and their daughter on a farm with 400 ostriches because 10 months ago, one dead carcass tested positive on a PCR test, potentially for the H1N1 flu. So now what we're going to use this for across other nations, the UK, Australia, and the Commonwealth, is to get those people who are at those mid-level cockroaches to start turning and rolling on each other. Military is the only way, is the axiom, which I feel that very shortly, probably between now and American Thanksgiving, is going to become a verb for everybody. And we're going to be shouting that from the rooftops, potentially in the civilian areas as well. Very positive.
Wow. Unbelievable. To my producer, Jess, if while I'm going through the platform here in the panel, see if you can talk with Brad, you know, in his ear, if you will, and make some additional adjustments to his audio. Yeah, thank you. All right. Excellent. Well, thanks a lot, Brad, for weighing in. We'll come back around with some other questions. And that brings us to, does anyone want to comment on anything else regarding the Comey issue before we move on to another subject? All righty. Then President Trump has declared an epidemic of violence in America. We were talking off camera about domestic. We'll get to that. So, you know, the president again officially said, you know, we have an epidemic of violence in America. Juan O'Savin reported the slaughtering of Christians in Africa. Just the other day, we had the shooting and fire in the Michigan church. Interesting timing. Are these attacks random, or is there a deeper, sinister force at play here concerning the broad subject of Christianity? Any angle you'd like to address this on to our panel, please do. We go back to Colonel Sellers, sir.
My gut feeling is that there is some sort of an architecture to this stuff, because the deep state do things by accident. They plan things out long in advance, even if they can move them in time and do them at different points in time. The infrastructure is already there. I believe these people, and I go back to the revolution. When the people that fought in the revolution is about 3% of the population. Okay, so if you use that as a rule, not everybody in these mosques and all this stuff. The great Islamist movement that's going in America that people talk about, and you start seeing more and more in the news about it. They're not all going to be combatants, but if you go with the 3% rule, there's going to be some people who've been trained underground or whatever, trained and ready to react according to their playbooks that they have rehearsed. So it's going to happen. I'm not saying that the entire Muslim population of the U.S. is going to overflow the streets and pull out their sabers and do what Muhammad tried to do in the 700s. But there's going to be an element that's already prepared and well trained. And then one comment on just really quick about the not necessarily Comey, but about the generals being called in by Trump. Pay attention to the video of Trump talking to those generals, because I got a massive feeling of not only unresponsiveness, but nervousness and, oh God, what is coming on the part of a lot of those generals. I was just looking at their body language and hearing what they were murmuring about, as Trump is even making a joke about, well, you don't have to stay. You can leave anytime you want to. You're going to lose your rank and your future, but you can leave. I thought that was brilliant. And you could feel the undertones and current of what was passing person to person among those generals right then. It's almost like they're looking at each other like, I knew you were not doing things right. I knew you. It was a really weird feeling. I wanted to throw that out.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to jump further into that in just a little bit. But that was interesting observation. So anything else, Colonel, on the Christianity? So you've got some concerns about a certain small percentage of the Islamic folks coming in to wreak some havoc, like the mercenaries and the folks at Soros.
Oh my God, yeah. And if they actually go after Soros, like they were saying in the news today, that they're going after him and they're going to take it down, that would be really, really good thing to do. No, I mean there's a lot more. We were chatting about it earlier, but there's a lot more ticker tape things that you see in the news and that come through that there's an upswell of the Islamist movement in the country, and it's just getting more and more. And I know that some of that is true right down the road from me. I mean, there's a Shiite community center at the edge of my neighborhood where at least 1,000 people congregate every single night, protected by off-duty police officers, I'm sure, that are being paid by that facility, by that church. And then right down 10 miles down the road is one of the largest mosques in the country. And in the last 3 weeks, month or so, they had massive demonstrations of massive numbers of Muslims that are associated with that mosque, just spilling all over the center of town in Sugar Land. I mean, that doesn't happen in Texas. You don't see that happening very often. I guess one good thing is that they just apparently passed a law banning Sharia law in Texas. Good on them.
Yes.
About time.
Yeah. Well, thanks for raising that issue. It's important. We got to keep our eyes and ears open for all types of potential disturbances. All right. So the same question to Lieutenant Colonel Bosi. Christianity. A lot happening.
Thanks. Thanks, John. And Chuck is exactly right. This is a systemic part of the plan. It's a structural part of the plan. Since they nailed Christ to the tree, they've had to get rid of the followers. If you look at the trajectory of any religion, there has been no religion so persecuted as Christians, ever, from the beginning. And so effective was it that they actually had to co-opt it and jump in front of the crowd and take it over and create what we know is the Church of Rome, which was built not on Peter the fisherman, but on Simon Magus, a local magician, let's call him, who defrauded everybody. Constantine took it over, the religion, made it the empire, the religion of the empire, and they needed to direct it away from Christ's teaching. So going all the way back, There's been no religion more persecuted than the Christians. Now, having said that, let's jump forward to today. We know that communism is a technique for establishing control. It's not the Workers' Party that are, fighting for good rights for the workers. It's got nothing to do with that. We know that. Their own writing says it. And one of the key statements in their own philosophy is that communism and Christianity are antithetical. Communism cannot survive if Christianity exists. And that's why all the way through to today, and the appalling actions going on in South Africa and just Africa generally, all the Christians, children being put into bread to dough kneading machines, crushing them alive, things that you won't hear about on the news. This is all necessary to destroy Christianity. Now back to the communists, because communism, that technique that is being used by deep state, it's not actually what they claim it is. And let me give you a really sort of left field example to show you how profound this anti-Christian sentiment actions are necessary for the deep state to take control. In Australia, we've got a land rights movement with the Aboriginals. Now, there wasn't a problem. It was moving along quite well. Missionaries were out in the outback saving lives, Christian missionaries particularly, who would turn around tribal violence, alcoholism, rape and murder of their own. This is the Aborigines. And the Christian missionaries had an extraordinary success rate in stopping the violence, the alcoholism, and the degradation of our black people in Australia. The communists went in there with a specific agenda to keep them in their prehistoric setup, not allowing them to own land on their own, making sure they lived like communists, like socialists in a community. And many of the Aborigines were not the least bit interested in remaining in an ancient way of life. They wanted a block of land of their own so they could advance. And what the communists did, and the land right movements in Australia is literally a figment of the Communist Party's imagination. And they went in there and they actively attacked and dismantled all the missionaries, the Christian missionaries in Australia, and returned the Aboriginal people to a desperate state of existence, which is worse than any third world country. Where, as an example, recently, not long ago, some months back, but it's the story all around Australia, where grandma was complaining too much because for whatever reason, and so one of the kids lopped off her head and wandered around with grandma's head in their arms, drunk, wandering around around Darwin, which is the capital city of our Northern Territory, and nothing ever happens. And the do-gooders, the hard left Australian Broadcasting Commission, which is our publicly funded news service, is boosting this nonsense and has been for decades, and has relegated them to this god-awful life where every child is sexually abused, they're drunk, they don't go to school, there's nothing. And all of that was as a direct result of the Christian missionaries being attacked and destabilized and chased out of town by the so-called Aboriginal human rights activists, who are all communist infiltrators and activists, throwing them out. And so this attack of Christianity, and everyone must understand this, Christianity must go down for the deep state to succeed. Now, it's not going to go down because, and here's the next part, and if this sounds like an insult, and forgive me, John, if I wax lyrical here just a little, I guess I'm fed up. I'm a little bit tired of all the nonsense. But they have to attack Christianity because we're the only ones on the planet who are going to fight for somebody else. Why? Because that's central to our philosophy, to our culture. We are all made in God's image. We are all equal regardless. No other religion has that concept to the depth that we do. Now, you have good Muslims, but as a country or a group, they will never fight for anybody but Muslims. Are there Muslims in armies? Yes. Do they fight? Yes. I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about a philosophy. The Jews. Has Israel ever fought for anybody but themselves? No. Hindus, do they fight for anybody but themselves? They can't even fight for themselves with their hierarchical system, with the Brahmins at the top and the untouchables on the bottom. Excuse me. In fact, the Brahmins aren't even on the bottom. You've got 4 layers, and the Brahmins are outside of society. And you can't advance no matter how good you are if you're untouchable. So these religions will never, as a group, as a country, as a philosophy, fight for anybody else, risk their lives for anybody else. Who does? The Christians. It's as simple as that. And that's why Christianity must go down. And just to put it, not to find a point on it, it's the Christian West and our failure that has led to exactly where we are today, the deep state in such a state of control, and a hair's breadth from victory. We're going to fight back and we're going to win, and we already have. But it's on us, folks. It's the Christians who have let down the planet. We're the only large group of people with a common view that says we must sacrifice ourselves for others. Why? Because we're all made in God's image. Nobody else will do it. It's our failure. I don't expect anything from Jews, Muslims, Christians, Hindus, or Buddhists or anybody else. I expect nothing from them because they have nothing in them that will sacrifice for others. Christians do. That's why it's got to go down. And back to Chuck's start point, it's exactly why it has been a part of every movement since he first turned up and they nailed him to the tree. We're going to win. We're going to win it without any doubt. We already have. We know that. Even if we lose on Earth, which we won't, we win the larger game. But this time we win on Earth as well. So that's a happy thought.
Thank you. You raised some interesting perspectives on that topic, and I appreciate you laying that down. And I think anybody would be hard-pressed to disagree with you. Same question over to Michael Jacob. Oh, we've got no audio. Your mic is muted.
Yeah, I totally agree with both these gentlemen. We've all traveled around the world quite extensively. The Christians are always attacked in the Middle East, always. If they don't have like big walls and heavy security around the churches now, they don't exist, and you can see the remnants of them everywhere. So I've been to, I just start naming off countries. I've been to Yemen. Yemen, I saw swastikas on walls because we know that Hitler basically used the Islamists to fight, and he promised them that he would give them all lands and stuff like that. Of course, Hitler lost, but they still fight. They still fight like, Nazis. It's crazy. Christians in every place they're at, just like both lieutenant colonels were saying, they help so much more than any Islamist or Muslim community helps others because they don't help each other. They are very, segregated. If it comes to the point where they're going to fight, it's like the one group against another. It's crazy. They fight each other. And then they fight the Christians. And every time there's an uprising, the Islamists use that as an excuse to, go attack Christians and burn the Christian homes and kill the Christians. It's crazy. And this has happened in Iraq, Afghanistan, like I said, Yemen. I've been to Beirut. The Christians in Beirut, I would say that is the most beautiful country that I've ever been to. Beautiful old cathedrals and bells ringing, and Christmas time there is just like the most exquisite place that I've ever seen. But all around the Muslim communities, if there's a Christian church that borders them, it's burned, it's gone. So they don't play well with other groups. And now we have them in the United States. All right, so they're going to be a problem. They're the brown shirts of the Democrat Party. We're going to see that. We have to be aware of that. I mean, I have a lot of Muslim friends, but we're talking extremists, and
Yes.
they don't get along with others, unfortunately. So that's my view.
Well said, and thanks for giving us all those insights, Derek. Weigh in on the Christianity aspect. It's a pretty big deal.
Well, I think there's a correlation between President Trump meeting with the generals, since that was brought up, and then also a correlation between that, the fight that's coming, and then getting the target audience ready as well, if there is anything on the low-level hanging fruit out there. Like President Trump told his generals, central casting. Right. So he said, you guys look like central casting. He said, might I add central casting? So that there's still some theater there. However, like the colonel said here, and then I love Lieutenant Colonel Bosey. He has a saying about, we're going to find out basically what kind of spine you have. I'll use the correct terminology tonight. I won't use anything slang for the ladies that are listening, but basically, Lieutenant Colonel was talking about one time about, all right, man, it's time to reach down in your wives' purses and pull out your jock strap down there by her tampon and put them back in your britches. All right, so if there was a general who wants to back out now, now's your time to back out. All right, because a lot of people, when they hear a general, they hear an individual. But when all of us military hears a general, we hear the general and their whole command, which can be 75,000 soldiers, more, less, give or take. So that was that. Me personally, in the United States of America, I've heard my whole life, I hear people say God wins and, I only trust Jesus and all those things. And I'm like, well, that's fine and all. But you better hope that Jesus is backing you when you have to strap up on a weapon if you had to. We're not saying that's common, but if you had to, you better hope that. So it's kind of like leaning on a shovel and praying for a hole. The hole's not going to dig itself. So you can say all these things about God and I trust God and Jesus and that and other, but you better be prepared. I have a Marine Corps buddy down in Texas that says all the time, we prepare for war and we pray for peace. Or you can flip it. We pray for peace and prepare for war. We're always prepared. That's why President Trump renamed it the Department of War. He said, we didn't rename it because we're going to be going to wars, but we're always going to be prepared for that. All the DEI and all this wheat spines and all these other pansy asses, if you will, the lightest I can go there, you're out of here. That's not going to be in here anymore. And so, I told some people this week on my podcast, I can guarantee you, and even Hedseth said this to the generals as well. He said something on the lines of getting in comment boxes on the internet and online and the social media and all these other things, because that's an heavy aspect of our life right now. It's like I told the Christians who follow me, if you think that whatever the pearly gates looks like, wherever it is, whatever it is, when you take your last breath and you make that next step, if you think that getting in the comment boxes is equivalent to I have fought the good fight, look, I'm not a theologian, I'm not a pastor, evangelist, preacher, or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure that fighting a good fight ain't talking trash on Facebook. It's doing exactly what all these men have done and what I'm trying to do, or my grandfathers, great uncles, uncle, dad, all the people that served in the military in my family. So there's that. I always like to quote too, like the insurrection. That's why President Trump showed compassion on J6ers, because at least they were in their minds and their hearts, they were thinking that we're done for. We got to do this. And a lot of people don't even know one of our founders, French founders, nonetheless, Marquis de Lafayette, said that insurrection was one of the last forms of defense when you feel like you're losing your country. So a lot of people don't realize that the fight. That's why President Trump, the motto, fight, fight, fight. It don't mean go looking for a fight. It just means if you bring one to me, I'll bring it to you first, though. My dad always told me, get the first lick. If you feel like you're going to be in a fight, go ahead and get that first lick, because the first one's going to take them out. And it's like he said, if you could whoop the bully's ass, the biggest bully, then all the others are going to run away. So if you have that mentality on the front, on the top, like the Roosevelt, you walk, speak softly, carry a big stick, but also let people know that I will use this stick. And you put that fear of God in people around the world, then we won't ever have to fight from the ground back up. And that's what the target audience thinks we're doing. And they don't realize. So it is trying to get them involved with that, understand that mentality. The other thing, President Trump last year, this Charlie Kirk thing was so strategic that people don't even realize how strategic it was. Last year on the campaign, President Trump was speaking to a group, and he said he laid out all this data, and it was like a whopping 90%, something insane, 90 percentile of Christians and gun owners do not vote. But oh boy, do they have an opinion. Oh boy, do they bark a lot, and especially in my regions of the U.S. and the southern region. Boy, they talk a big talk about how you come to my turf and I'll shoot you and da-da-da-da-da. They don't even vote. They don't even vote for their rights. And President Trump laid that out. And then the low-level hanging fruit liberals did what? They ran with his comment where he said, Christians, get out and vote, Christians. You won't ever have to vote again. Well, he was trying to sound the alarm to get people to vote, to get what? Involved. It wasn't that we're going to lose the election. He already told them, we already have enough votes, but he was trying to get people involved. He was trying to get that target audience engaged and locked in on what you're supposed to know about. All right. Well, let me show you how strategic that was. Do you know where that was? That speech was at Turning Point USA where he said that. And like I said this week, I bet your asses will be voting this November, won't you, target audience? Yes, you will. All right, so there's that tie-in. And then getting to the Muslim thing, it's like Jaco said, we all know someone that's a Muslim, and not all are bad. But it's like the slogan is out there that not all Muslims are jihadists, but all jihadists are Muslims. All right, so you always have to be prepared. And then like the farmer, and I think it was out in New Mexico or Arizona, somewhere out there not long ago, he had to shoot an illegal migrant, and the liberals went stir crazy, and the judge didn't do a thing to that person because he was defending his turf, defending his territory, and defending his land and property. So that shows you there is a shift, and President Trump has an executive order 13977 on January the 18th, 2021, which was right before people thought he stepped away, which he didn't, but it was to protect judges, law enforcement, prosecutors, and their families. All right, so we're taking a giant stand, and the target audience needs to know that that is part of that. And if it does come to your backyard, if it does come to your door, be ready. But more than likely not. But also, listen to your commander. If there's something in your city and they tell you to sit your rear end at home, they don't need no Barney Fife going down there with their little one bullet coming out of their pocket. Oh, let me get my bullet. Stay at home. Let the big dogs handle it. We got it.
You raise a lot of great points there, Derek. Thank you. And your passion is felt around the world. Let me ask you one quick comment. Actually, just a comment. I like the term target audience. I think that speaks volumes and is a little less condescending to those that are not fully awake just yet. Target audience. Great word. Thanks, Derek. Okay, Brad, I'm glad you're back. Thank you for coming back in. You didn't miss any questions. We're on the subject of Christianity, the persecution of Christians, and Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi shared some gruesome details with regards to the methods of which they're doing this in Africa. And then we've got the church shootings that Mike is concerned about. How would you like to weigh on the broad subject of Christianity today and what's going on?
Yeah, can you hear me now, John?
Yeah, much better. The cloud of thunder behind you seemed to have dissipated. Thank you.
Right on. Probably the RCMP. That's what we'll all just blame it on them, anyways. And this is not a plug for Verizon, by the way. But it's really important. I'll preface it with this. General Valley emphasized it once again on our show today that in the Quran, the word love does not exist. And I think he also said that in the call that we were on with him, Chuck, with all the generals and the admirals today, talking about what's going on, right? So the word love doesn't exist in the Quran. We said it's an ideology. It's a movement. It's not a religion. It's not spiritual, which is really sad because, there are people that are heart-centered who identify as Muslim. But where a lack of love, how do you live a life without a lack of love? You're a sounding uniform of the soul. To me, that's the designation, the acronym of soul. Okay. And then when we just saw 8 days ago at the United Nations General Assembly, a co-founder of ISIS who's now heading up Syria. I don't know if this was said while we were doing the audio test or test, but he had just massacred 2,000 Christians in Syria the week prior. And now he's on U.S. soil, the United Nations General Assembly. Now, for all the men here and your team and your target audience, many of them realize that at the end of that, Scavino posted the video with Marine One landing across the harbor from Manhattan and the Hudson and playing Nessun Dorma. Perhaps that could be something that we can celebrate going, all right, Nessun Dorma, we've got the calm. Just like we saw the calm with YMCA being played at Windsor Castle in the UK the week prior, the USA flag flying over Winter Castle, and the orders that Trump just issued to have all these commanders that want to go to Virginia, Marine base that want to go to Virginia, want to have FBI. I think that's pretty important. If you just look at the most well-known pastor last half decade in the world is Archer Patlowski. He's just a couple hours from me. I'll probably be seeing him next week. And everybody remembers at Kutzal Border Crossing, Michael I did several shows with him. to stop the tyranny and bring it out to the world, and so did some other amazing patriots too. And here's a pastor who, it went back to 2004, didn't know this, that he was being persecuted, who grew up with his brother David, communist Poland. And he said when 38 million Poles stood up, 50,000 Nazi communist Soviet tyrants fell. And he said that Canada was the beacon of freedom. And he would preach and give free food on the streets of Calgary every Saturday, without fail, and preach. He had over 185 citations, over 400 tickets, 180 court cases before COVID lockdown pandemic from the World Economic Forum and vaccine genocide agenda. And then we saw him telling the Nazis to get out of his church, close the churches, close the schools, keep the liquor stores open. So how can people figure, like, is there an attack on Christianity here or not, when that's so rampant and in your face, and they're still doing it today? They're doing prayer and mass, by the way, at Universal Ostrich Farms, and I'll wrap it up with this to this point. And so last week, I've talked about the power of prayer, talk about the power of belief. Last week, when they all moved in, with the ERT SWAT team, with the paraplegic husband, senior citizen, having a heart attack in the farm 2 hours from any freaking hospital here in this remote location at the farm. People started praying because they were moving in to slaughter these ostriches. And in the last moment, a First Nations individual came up and said, this land, these people, these animals are under our protection. First Nations, you all must leave. Now, of course, they didn't leave, they stood fast and they backed down. And that happened just after a prayer service, and they got a call out of the blue. And that happened. So, prayer works, and that it is a first generation, well, it's sixth generation warfare, but it's first and foremost in front of us, every generation going forward, that they want to distinguish the light, and they want to remove it for the deep state agenda on planet, no planet, not. And I think it's very paramount, people, whether you're a believer or not, or an atheist, and these men, some of these men can tell you in battle, a lot of men get gone real quick who are atheists.
Well, thank you, Brad. I just want clarification. You did state that the Quran, I want to make sure I got this right, there's not one mention of the word Love, love, not once in the Quran. Is that accurate?
That's right. That was just 5-6 hours ago from General Valley right here on our show live.
Thank you for bringing that up. I won't comment about that. I don't think it requires one. I think everybody understands. All right, so thank you, Brad. We're going to move on to another subject, folks. We have cement walls and fences being resurrected at the White House. Fencing. We have, at the same time, Secretary of War Hegseth just summoned all these generals from around the world for this meeting that just took place. Again, I spoke with Brigadier Retired General Blaine Holt last week, and he advised the American people in any town and any city to prepare and be vigilant as, quote, it may be dangerous just to get to the grocery store. Right now, we have the U.S. military tanks and the National Guard and Army Reserves on the streets of Oregon. Tell us what you believe. We're going back to around the panel to to Colonel Sellers. Tell us what you believe is about to unfold in October and November with all these pieces that we see, 800 generals, admirals being, and we're going to talk more about the specifics of what took place in the next question. But we have the convening of all these generals and admirals. We've got fencing and cement walls going up at the White House. We've got the program of the National Guard combing through cleanup crime. And we have what we see now escalating in terms of military presence. And I, for one, am very grateful for that taking place in America. What's your view about what's about to happen, Colonel Sellers, in October and November? And what is the assessment of risk from your viewpoint for potential disruption and life-threatening situations for everyday Americans in their communities? You've got your mic off, sir. Thank you.
I think it kind of goes back to some of the things we were talking about on our last call a month ago or so. Um, Again, I think that President Trump set the stage for doing this in the most efficient way that he could. People, there's still going to be people that are coming out and going to say, "Oh, posse comitatus, we can't have soldiers on the streets enforcing laws and all of this." And remember, what we talked about was he never invoked Title 10, so that goes away. He used Title 32, Section 502F, and that does not require posse comitatus waived. So, I mean, basically, he's assisting law enforcement in the execution of their duties, and that's what these guys are doing. Um, Perfectly legal, and again, I do still believe that this is all going according to a plan that's been worked out by senior leadership and this and that. And it's being carried out by the numbers. It's still progressing. I mean, they put people shoot troops on the street in D.C. I'm not sure that they've done it in Chicago yet, but guess what? It's coming. Los Angeles, they did put troops on the ground in Los Angeles during the fires and the riots and all that stuff. And there's going to be more coming, and it's all legal. And I think all you got to do is look at the reception those National Guardsmen got on the streets in D.C. and when they were being deployed. People are running up to them and hugging these guys because they're coming in there to quash the disruption that's going on from the crime in their communities. And that's what the Democrats want. They want crime in the communities. They want it to be as disrupted as possible. Otherwise, they have no chance of doing nefarious things that they do. So I think that what they're doing right now is right according to the plan. And there's going to be changes. There's going to be, different that have to come up because we all say, the first shot's fired and the plan changes. That's right. But that's why we have different courses of action that are already thought about and planned out. And I think they've done all of that. And that debacle, or whatever you call it, the spectacle with the 800 generals there getting chewed out by the president. Basically, they were getting their asses chewed by the president. You don't want to come along? You don't have to come along, but you will pay the price. And Pete Hegseth is doing that for the president, and he's going to make it happen. And those swarmers that were in that audience of generals, and there were a bunch of them, and you could watch them, you could pick them out. You know who you are, and you're not going to get away with it. You're not going to make it through this thing. And we've always said before, next one up in the breach, take your position. You're up on deck.
Wow, Colonel Sellers, what comes to my mind is, addressing our viewers, we've heard about war on the streets of America only through history lessons. Listen to the language, listen to the dialogue, listen to the response from this esteemed panel, folks. We're at war. How many years have I been saying that? We are at war, and it's coming to our front door. In fact, I'll rattle off a few names, and this is public fact. Sheriff Richard Mack, retired Lieutenant Colonel of the Marines Matt Meck, Juan O'Savin, retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt, General Michael Flynn, to name a few stellar names that this country has respect for, who know a few things. They're all telling us this war is coming to your front door. So we're not trying to scare anyone here. We're just trying to heed the call. We're going to get into things that we can be doing in our communities in a moment. But I want to raise one sub-question, Colonel Sells, that came to my mind when you walked us through that. The left, of course, and maybe even some elements within our movement are saying President Trump is overstepping his bounds as a commander-in-chief and president. He's a dictator. This becomes the narrative. And everyone on this panel and most of our viewers, we're anticipating this to come a long time ago. Well, it's here now, and they're calling him a dictator. You stated factually that everything he's doing is lawful and constitutional. I have a question and about that aspect, and the question is, because it's coming to me from a lot of public texts and social questions on social media. My response is, in other words, how can President do this? My response is, we're under a wartime command structure. I've referred them to Derek Johnson's 1776 Nations to connect the dots on the executive orders, the PEDS, and the Law of War Manual updates. And I invoked the word martial law. That's what kind of got me a little bit in a quandary in communicating with the public. While an official martial law has not been officially declared, being under this wartime command structure, this military operation, isn't that like martial law on steroids, to use a simple term? We'll go with Colonel Sells, and we'll go straight to Derek Jonhson to comment on that. Then we'll go back to the board with the question. Martial law, wartime command, is Trump a dictator?
No, I don't think he's a dictator. I think he's well within his rights and bounds on what he's doing. The thing that comes to mind again, I'm going to always go back that I think this is a planned campaign. Okay, Sun Tzu says, whenever possible, win without firing a shot, and that's what he's doing. That's what they're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting on the streets. Yep. They're not shooting. They're there for presence and to help the law enforcement guys do their job. And I like it when there's a lot of presence on the street, because that does help things. And it's not shots being fired for the most part. It's a show of force, not only really, it's a show of support for the law enforcement activities in this country that are getting overwhelmed by what these jackasses are putting on the street against them. To me, this is a prime example of winning using the techniques that Sun Tzu outlines in his book.
Yes, thank you, Derek. Just real brief, because we got to go to Lieutenant Colonel Bosey on this question, but just cite, if you will, the connectivity of executive orders, PEDS, and the Law of War Manual for those that still think the president is acting, overstepping his boundary. Can you help us out? Martial law, wartime command structure. The president was within his lawful and constitutional limits. Please connect that briefly for our viewers.
Well, it's hard to do it briefly, but I'll do it as brief as possible,
Okay.
if I may, with no disrespect to the colonels and the chief. Well, if you're gonna say against the law, then you probably need to know the law. That's the first thing I suggest to people out there. Most of these laws have been on paper long before 2016. The law, the order hasn't. So see, that's where people, they hear law and order, but they don't know how those correlate. But just for example, in America, all right, the target audience, again, they're typically people who react to drama only when they're told to react. They don't react on their own because they're not reading on their own. They're being spoon-fed, and it depends on what side they're on. You know, it's like the birds in the nest. Depends on what kind of mother you have that's feeding you, right? Are you on the left? Well, you're going to hear that. If you're on the right, well, you're going to hear what you're going to hear. That's why the campaign was planned a long time ago. And the laws and orders do show that. But there are unique laws and orders. There are strategic laws and orders. There are special laws and orders, the presidential emergency action documents. All right, I just found that video again today in my phone where President Trump, the first 180-day speech, he said, I signed over 350 executive actions, not orders, actions. All right, that's very key for people to hear in the first 100 days. And he said it really in the first week. There's only 372 executive actions right now to September the 30th as we speak. So that means that you got to be tracking. I know for fact by March, there were not that many on the board. All right. So you got to go look at that. That means the others are in presidential emergency action documents, which are draft classified. All right. And then you heard Benny Johnson, of all people, at the Charlie Kirk, quote unquote, funeral with no casket. All right. You heard him say that we have a godly government, that the Department of War and Department of Justice took over this nation. That is a direct validation right there of your military operation, your military occupation, and your continuity of government. All right, which then includes unconventional warfare, irregular warfare, which includes government in exile, and a puppet government. And President Trump has used those terms over and over and over, way back starting in 2017, talking about the capitulations. So capitulation, white flag of surrender, occupied territory, and then puppet government are all law war manual terms. They're not whatsoever government terms, federal anything. They're all law war manual terms. Occupied territory and puppet government are in the same chapter, military occupation. So when you hear a verbal, which is a comm, out of your commander in chief, and then you have all these other things that intertwine, then you'll know that we're absolutely in a military operation. And then the theater or the distractions. All of the panel here, me and several others, you can look at things. Once you know all the plan and the blueprint, you can see what's a distraction, what is theater, what was actual real time maybe 5 years ago, but they're just now showing it to you now. There's all these variables that play out because the end goal, there will be disclosure and there will be satisfactory over probably 70 to 80% of the America, maybe the world, depends on what, they're going to do with it. But then you look at like the target audience. June 24, 2018 is when the military was telling people that 26 of our 31 combat brigades are going to be fighting in mega cities, not inside them, but beneath them. What are you seeing right now? All right, so there's a lot of that. Also, Title 32, the National Guard. All right, if quote unquote Joe was real and if he was really president, then you got to look at Title 32 in 2018 that Mad Dog Mattis invoked for the polls, the election polls. All right, the only way a troop can be, or a soldier, or anybody, entity from the military, one person, a unit, a squadron, whomever, at the polls is on federal duty only by the whom? The commander-in-chief. That's a Title 18, Section 592. Title 18 is federal crimes, ladies and gentlemen. So if there was someone down there in a uniform, they were trying to persuade you to vote for someone that, the opposite candidate, they could be punished for that. They have to be on official duty. So if quote unquote Joe was real and really president, then why would they call President Trump a dictator, a threat to democracy, a threat to the Constitution, and all these things? Because the Title 32 was put in 2018. The National Guard were at the polls 2018, 2020, 2022, 2024. So why were they there in 2022 and 2024 when there's only one Title 32 invoked, and that was way back in 2018? So that would show for the normal target audience, this is layman's terms, if it were real, that would show that Biden is correlated with President Trump. And that ain't what they're spewing out there now. That's the theater. All right. Then you have Proclamation 9844. All your troop movement down at the southern border. Proclamation 9844 from President Trump way back in February 2019. There's that. Also, what the colonel was just talking about there, the troops on the ground and all these people saying it's against the law and these other things. First off, you got another law again. Joint Publication 3-57, page 46. It specifically tells you generally you don't want DOD, which is now DOW, Department of War. Generally, you don't want the active duty military in the streets with your law enforcement unless what? It says unless the Constitution or Congress. Well, guess who did that? Constitution and Congress did that in December 2019. Congress, a Democratic House of Representatives under President Trump and a Republican Senate passed this and put it in Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. That's the legislative branch. The writ of habeas corpus, where you can suspend, they call it suspension clause, suspending the Constitution. That's Article 1. That's your legislative branch. And guess who did all this? The legislative branch. And President Trump just gets the face for it, and he can take the heat because it's all theater, it's all planned. And then one other little thing nugget. In Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide, Special Operations Command, when you look above the Revolutionary Pyramid, which shows all our tactics that we can use in a revolutionary war, basically, which is what this is, right above that, in the paragraph above, it says that the United States government, if they don't want to get involved, the military can act without the United States government on a what? A presidential finding or a presidential executive order. That's as quick as I
Thank
can
you
do
very
it.
much, Derek. Well, that was good. Thank you for putting that on the record. Dictator, President Trump, dictator my ass. And what we're engaged in here is a counter revolution. Make no mistake about it. Thank you, Derek. We're going to go back now to Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi. And to reframe the question, sir, we're talking about the the National Guard, the military presence, the tanks, and so forth coming through the streets of America. And I believe it's just getting started, certainly with the cities that we've yet to visit. So my question is, with that going on and the building of fences and walls in D.C., the convening of these generals, what do you make of all this, Lieutenant Colonel Bosi?
Okay, let's start with the White House and the walls. A couple of things, and you look at this through two prisms. One is the optics and one is the reality, and they must support each other. First of all, the White House is an iconic building. It cannot afford to be even given the impression that it's under danger. In reality, not in reality, it cannot suffer damage, right? It is too iconic a building. It must remain pristine. So too must the president. So the wall goes up. Why is that? One, it's a message to the people that says, this is real. There is real threat. The president is taking this seriously. So should you. Now, we've got under control, but he's taking it seriously, and so should you. So the threat is real. And there is a real threat still, because the crazies are still out there, and some of the crazies will do crazy things. That's what they do. So that's point one. The threat is real. The president's under threat, so therefore we must protect the White House and therefore the president. Secondly, you should protect yourselves. Protect yourselves. Be ready. The threat is real. Now, is it going to be widespread chaos and revolution? No, it's going to be very localized if and when it occurs, and it'll be under control quite quickly, because when you've got more than the rest, you tend to win, and that's exactly what the White House now have. And that's the purpose of the White House and the walls. Take it seriously. Threat is real. Some is fraud. We accept that. And some is force. We accept that. We can't tell. We don't need to tell. All we need to do is behave ourselves and know that it's going to get very, very serious. The generals, and we'll talk about that. I know you want to talk about that next, but just in terms of the optics of that, this is Donald Trump showing the world he has everyone in hand. Good or bad makes no difference. He has everybody. So again, the optics of this is, and don't believe this is a briefing session on strategy and tactics. We have, militaries have a fantastic chain of command. You don't need to see the boss every 2.5 minutes. But when things get critical, the boss's presence is key. Julius Caesar did this in Gaul. Wherever the fight was, wherever his troops were losing, Caesar would turn up, and the centurions would look up and see the Caesar there, and they'd fight twice as hard to make sure that Caesar knew that they weren't the ones that let him down, because self-interest is a pretty big issue here. And don't think that those generals aren't hugely self-interested, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So again, the optics of it, DJT stands up and says what he says, and the world looks at that and says, my God, 800 generals. We don't have 800 tanks. And he's got 800 generals, and as Derek points out, that's a lot of capability behind those generals and admirals, a lot. And so this is, I was going to use a crass term, I won't do it. He's giving everybody an object lesson in, we've got it, you don't. Behave yourselves. And this is internationally. It follows that embarrassing parade of European leaders being dragged to the White House like recalcitrant school children in front of the headmaster. This is a follow-on, and people are starting to get the idea, my God, Trump is the man. And this is for the target audience, we're now calling them. I like that term. That's a much more generous term. Well done, Derek. The target audience is seeing what they need to see. Last point, then I'll stop. The final reason why this is important, the walls, the generals, and the rest, what a lot of the population still have to see, and these are good people. These aren't bad. They're just, they're the true believers. They watch the mainstream media, and they believe it because they're good people. What they need to see is evidence of crime. If they see evidence of crime and then a response to the evidence of crime, they are now fully on board, because these are law and order people too. They might be misguided, they might be misinformed, whatever. They might be uninterested. But when they see evidence of crime, and this is what all this is leading up to, and then the response, they go, yeah, we've got no problem with that. And as Colonel Sellers said, we're already seeing that in the streets where the military have turned up. The crime is gone. They're being hugged by the locals, and they're enjoying life again. So the last point is this evidence of crime is real. Therefore, the last holdouts that don't want to believe that DJT is the man to save the nation, and therefore is that last piece of evidence that they need to see and hear and feel. evidence of crime. Here's the response. Yes, we're now behind DJT because, once again, this is critical. We can't afford to have a divided family. We can't afford to have a divided nation. We can't afford to have a divided planet. The risks are too high. So there you go.
Great. Thank you very much. Great points. Michael, Jacob, we're on this topic. Would you like to weigh in? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, the president and Pete Hegseth today basically both over and over reiterated that we're here, military, you're here to protect the country from foreign and domestic. So they kept saying over and over again, we're in a domestic war right now. So they're telling those guys, you need to be ready to fight here in America. And they already are. So we're already seeing it in LA with the Marines there. We're seeing it in Washington, D.C. He talked about that, how Washington, D.C., people couldn't walk the streets, and now they can. So this is basically slow rolling this so that people can see that, yeah, we need this. Now, as far as like the Muslim invasion, the Europeans fought the Muslims for 1,100 years. 1,100 years. I mean, battle after battle, Battle of Tours, the Battle of Vienna, Battle of Malta. I mean, we could just, the Crusades over and over and over again. Now they're being defeated by their own governments. Their own governments are allowing this invasion into their own countries. President Trump and Pete Hegseth talked about that invasion, and they've stopped it at the border, but still our country has been invaded here in the United States, and in Canada, you name the country, Australia, New Zealand, all of us have been invaded by our governments. We're at a point where these governments overstep their bounds on a massive scale. We saw that there was military, and they named names today of military leaders that had overstepped their bounds and had forced vaccinations, all kinds of crazy stuff. So, and they're talking about how, if you're a woke general or admiral, you're pretty much gone. So we're back in a merit-based system because we're going to need it going forward. Christians, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but we're going to have to rise up and clean house.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So we're taking the question to Derek Jonhson. You've commented already, but if you want to just weigh in a bit about the tanks, the military presence, and what you see taking place in October and November, which is really upon us now.
Well, I mean, I think it's important too to let people see, one, like we were talking about, see not the crime necessarily, but most of this stuff's already been done. It's kind of like I like using the movies Death Wish, like Charles Bronson with the vigilante. Kind of that's what President Trump's kind of got, that persona kind of deal. For the target audience, they love things like that. So you give them something like that, this stew on a little bit, but also too is making sure that people realize, you're not going to leave one city and go to another and hide out. Like, you're not going to be able to hide anywhere. If you're MS-13, you're a gang, you're any kind of criminal, whatever you are, you're not going to, this is the true saying. I use it all the time with the commanders that have been relieved of duty, but this also applies to this. We're torching the barn and killing the rats kind of deal. And as President Trump's also alluded to all these other world leaders that you got to get tough in your nations too. Like he praised El Salvador. So when he praises someone, a lot more people are going to want to be involved in things like that as well, as we take down all the evil in the world. So everybody's watching that. Moving into, which we're pretty much hours away from October now. We've already alluded to it earlier that you got most people who are paying attention know that Hillary's subpoena and also Bill's coming up. You got Comey as well, again, supposed to be subpoenaed for this. So, there's a lot of things that's leading into Red October, as we like to call it. I think this is, I don't make predictions, but I think that this is a good way to lead into the only way that you can get people's attention is to show them, as we always say, but also the good side, the EAS, using the emergency alert system. There's one way to get everybody on one page. Well, they just passed the first test. they didn't focus on the goriness, which it wasn't gory, it wasn't even real blood, but for the target audience that thought it was the Charlie Kirk thing, no one focused on the gory, right? They didn't focus on the blood. They didn't focus on any of that because they've been what? They've been watching Yellowstone, Ozark, Walking Dead, all these TV shows that are more gruesome than what they even showed on TV the other day. So they're ready for the quick trials. They're ready. They pass the test. President Trump, in a speech about a month ago, said, I don't think people are ready for it. I don't think people, oh, they ready. So a lot of this was testers as well. So everything's been, choreographed perfectly, and they're ready for that. And then patriots are ready. Patriots ready for justice. And it's like Brad said, it's unfortunate, though, in another manner. We should never want to root for this. This falls back on humanity always. If you stay on guard always and you prepare always and you know what to look for always, then you'll spot things before it hits the fan. And that's why certain people naturally going to retaliate, naturally going to call you a name, say a bunch of stuff like they show in the low-level hanging fruit do against President Trump. But that's just because, again, they don't know what they're even yelling about, and they don't even realize how controlled and captured they've been the last however old they are. So this is a clean out. I think it's a great awakening personally. I think that's how they're going to roll it into that and then get to your July 4th. That is not just for Republicans, conservatives, patriots, whoever's listening. That's going to be for the world. So to get to that moment, July 4th, think about it. What's in between?
Yeah, the danger zones in between. You mentioned we're going to go to Brad in just 1 second. You mentioned the EAS emergency alert system or emergency broadcast system. Very quickly, because I know it's on the mind of everyone watching this broadcast and would like to hear what each of you have to say. And I'm going to ask of everyone as we go around. The EBS, the arrests, the big arrest, and the EBS. We are, as you said, hours away from October. All the people that I talk with on and off air tells me October is the big month and November. Do you see the EBS being activated? And do you see the big arrest of Hillary Clinton coming and perhaps Barack Obama? Straightforward question. Obama, Hillary arrest, October, November, EBS, yes or no? Your crystal ball. Derek Jonhson.
Well, President Trump last month, he posted again, he's done this before, but he posted again about all roads lead to Obama, retruth if you want to see military tribunals. Then he posted the AI video of Obama getting arrested. So the only thing that could lead to, if all that was just like theater to play on people's emotions and things like that, and that never happened, then we would be working with the flip side of, okay, this was all a joke, this was all of this, and that's not the case whatsoever. So I do see that. The emergency alert, though, if I may specify, the way I think they would do it is, you're sitting in a bar with your buddies, you don't know who all's in there, liberals and whatnot. More than likely, when you're out on the town, there's going to be other people that think different than you somewhere. But if your phone flips and your TV flips and everybody's flips at one time, nobody can get out of that. And so if they are watching what they saw with the whole order of succession that they showed for the funeral no casket, which would be a national security disaster if that was real, but it wasn't. But that is also showing you something that you might be seeing your whole order of succession soon, maybe in a general assembly. Also, you saw all the generals and the admirals in one location. So it may be something along the lines of that where, when you take generals, men and women, of all ethnicities, nationalities, walks, lives, etc., and you put everybody together and you do a reveal party to everybody. If you question that, then you're leaving some stuff on the table, right? So that I don't think it's gonna be spooky, scary for people, but I think the spooky, scary might be if there's a low-level retaliation in a city somewhere, which is what we're telling people to keep your head on the swivel for. Not the planned theater part. All this was already planned. The 45-47 shows that. But I think that the scary part could be like if low-level hanging fruit in our levels down here on the civilian level now were to react like jihadists and whatnot. But that's where the military, they're ready, they're prepared for that. But I think that might trigger that. Right, I think that would be your trigger point when they show this whatever they show with the subpoenas, they may not show that initially, but if that's later in October or leading into November, but that's got to happen, because there's no way we're celebrating that after July 4th, in my opinion.
Thank you. Brad, you've been listening to the panel on this broad topic of the tanks and the military on the streets and protective gear around the White House, and what's coming in October, November. How would you like to weigh in, sir?
Yeah, some amazing points, as always, from all these gentlemen, John. Appreciate it. And a couple of things, on the Christianity, picking up there and segue into everything else that we're discussing at this moment. Christianity is a kinetic word. It is a verb. It is an action. This is divine law, where you're not to trespass on others, not to do any harm. But like Exef said to the camera today, about 2 minutes into his speech, he looked at it and said, "To our enemies, you FA, you left." And that's exactly what we have to see beyond the Great Awakening, in my opinion, is the spiritual awakening, right? Downplay for generations now, probably 50 or 60 years since the last greatest generation, World War II, which is if you came into their town and you started messing around, those old veterans would get busy. They would bust out and they would say, "All right, want a little bit of this." We saw it with Clive Bundy's farm, by the way, in 2014, with the feds trying to take his livestock, much like the situation going on a little bit over past where I am right now. So people have to wake up to that. People have to get ready. And patent moment that we had today with Hegseth and then Trump, what that stage was amazing to watch that, right? So anybody who's even watched the old Patton movies, or has read the books like all these men have here, and they know about it, and Patton referenced again, bringing back the old age of the generalists who were actually doing things, MacArthur, Patton's of the world, getting that back into military programs in the schools, the academies, and the prep schools, as well as all the way down to the grassroots levels, the enlisted, the NCOs who are going to be schooling up and training everybody from the Coast Guard to the airmen to the seamen and the sailors and the soldiers. That was pivotal, I believe, for anybody to see and witness and listen to all of that for that hour, who may not be awake to what's going on the military side. Derek and I just celebrated a 4-year anniversary just 3 days ago. And yes, it was Mike's birthday, so a happy belated to Mike. But it also was the anniversary of the National Command Authority, where the Commander-in-Chief flying F-16s 100 feet, 150 feet over our heads in Cheyenne, Wyoming, in the residential area. And that was all thanks, Laura Savin was on the phone with us at the time, standing right beside me. Like, where are you guys located? A few minutes later, F-16, 8 of them, 30 seconds apart, C-130s, and then 5 hours of Black Hawk helicopters. So again, this is the plan for anybody who's just kind of coming onto your show now, John, to realize that you have 2 people here who are standing side by side, Derek and I, with these F-16s flying over in restricted residential airspace, and 2 other men here, Michael and Colonel Sellers, Chuck, confirms that the only person or who had the authority to allow that was the head of the Joint Chiefs National Command Authority or the Commander-in-Chief to take up that unrestricted airspace and allow that air show to happen for almost 6 hours straight. And I've just got 2 more points to make here about Trump. We said today on a call, and I was just privy to it and invited on, and I appreciate it. There's over 300 veterans, 15 generals and admirals on that call. Chuck was on that call as well. I saw him there. And it was said that, okay, all of you here, we took an oath, which is to preserve, not to preserve, but it's the right word, to protect and defend America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Everybody's heard that many times. But what was also stated by the general on that call said, however, President Trump's oath, only one in the national structure and chain, his oath is to protect, defend, and preserve. He said nobody took that oath to preserve. And as it relates back to rolling out the military in the cities, rolling out the martial law, using the EAS in different zones and other zones in Canada, they're called EBS and whatnot, in different Commonwealth country corporations that are now under the control, optically wide open this week and last week and the previous week. And Trump is the king of the world and also the president of the United States for America. And today they made it very clear. Constitutional Republic of America. Hegseth and Trump said that multiple times. Constitutional Republic and Republic. Constitutional Republic and Republic. So that was also continually woven into the conversation where we could pick up on. And lastly, to the point about the attacks, I just had a guest on the show yesterday. He has founded probably the world's best open source intel now with Sarah Adams, Mike Glover, his former Delta Special Forces, Sean Ryan's been on there, Command 11, a couple other people. And now a few of the men here have also been pointing out on their shows and podcasts that, 9/11 false flag 2.0 attacks are imminent. His intel is basically, yes, we echoed the same with the title to that show, but exactly how they're going to carry it out. And he said, this is absolutely true. It is not about if it's going to happen. It is when you're seeing it. World War III 107 saying it, and everybody's out there right now. What their first targets they're going to do is target the tier 2 cities where they have only one trauma level 1 center. They will go in, they'll get up on a roof, for example, at a schoolhouse. John, if I can take a minute to elaborate on this, I think your audience will find this not only fascinating, but horrific, and hopefully they can pick up some maybe, vigilance and take care of a few things that they haven't done yet to prepare just in case. What he said is the tactics that Al-Qaeda and ISIS are working together with Hezbollah, cartels, and there's already 500,000 trained, militarized terrorists, including CCP backers in the U.S., in Canada, in all these other countries, waiting, sleeper cells as well, for years, waiting for the call. These red cells to activate. They will go to schools. They will get on board. They're going to have a panel there. Say they're an HVAC. All up there. They've got their coveralls. They're going to pump sarin gas into the schools, and all of a sudden the kids are going to come out. Then they hose them down to wait for the first responders. But they also have uniforms. And he said it has been reported for the last several years that dry cleaners have been broken into, where you have first responders uniforms, law enforcement, sheriff's uniforms as well, that have been stolen. They've been doing all the surveillance, all the major, the tier 2 and tier 3 urban areas around the United States primarily, but also in Canada. So they're going to show up with their police cruisers, fully uniformed, and say it's not safe for you to leave yet, and then turn around and open up on them and wait for the actual first responders. And that's where the second wave of attacks goes, just like you saw in Mumbai, India. Then what they're going to do is they're going to pull off in the Decode, that's a vehicle born IED, excuse me, I'm having of trouble here. Blow a VBIT, that takes care of the kids in the school, descend upon the hospitals, start gunning down everybody in the hospitals, all those soft targets, city plazas and malls. And he said, this is here, this is in the chatter, this is being reported, and this is imminent between December to February. So what we're seeing here and talking about what may roll out in October and November, hopefully is enough to prevent what's going to happen in December and February with all the chatter and all the channels of these guys. And he said the number one thing for anybody to do if this happens, probably strike in the morning on a weekday. Families are separated apart, kids are at school, people are at work, and then they start taking down the soft targets in schools and the malls, and they start taking out then the hospital environment centers. That get away. Don't run toward it. Don't wait. If it's normalcy, get off the exit. Get away. Distance is your friend. He said in certain areas, they could be without. He said there's jammers already and hackers ready to come in and shut down your comms networks and capabilities as well. He said it's all infiltrated and ready to go. Now I'm not here to pitch any football, but it also is really important to stay vigilant because I've just reported in my opening of what is still going on. What I've failed to report to everybody is the RCMP sent a battalion-sized armada to a farm. Mere hours away, a 6-year-old boy was reported missing for 48 hours in that community, a place called Crow's Nest Pass on the BC-Alberta border, was crying for responders, crying out for people to search for missing boy who was still missing yesterday. The RCMP, so nobody is here to save you. That is very clear as I can report from where I am right now. And Rick has said this for a long time. Michael has said this for a long time, that you need to be prepared at all levels and for anything. Right now, all of it is, it's about to go off. So will it be October? Likely, I would imagine. He just told us right October. I think that chatter is coming all back here as well too. So it can be a great time, but it also can be the worst of times. We have to prepare for the worst, and that we have to. Does that make sense?
Thank you. You've raised some very alarming issues, but I'll choose the word. It's serving us as an alert to pray, plan, and prepare. So thank you very much. And you raised a very important issue. Those that take the oath to the Constitution to protect and defend, most of us that take that oath to protect and defend, but it is only the commander-in-chief and it is only the president that a new word is added into that oath: protect, defend, and preserve. And that's exactly what President and Commander-in-Chief Donald J. Trump is doing, as Derek also pointed out. Thank you, Brad. We're going to take, let's see, I'm losing track of, we're starting a new question with Colonel Sellers. Let me focus on this question. We're going to take a new turn in here. I've got one or two more questions before we can convene the panel. This is a couple of weeks old, but nonetheless very important to get each of you to briefly comment on. We'll start with Colonel Sellers. The United Kingdom. You invoked the terms we've invoked in various broadcasts that President Trump is a supreme commander-in-chief, king of the world, as you just stated, which can take in a lot of attacks, but I understand what you're talking about. We're going to jump into a little bit of that right now. Colonel Sellers, the UK. President Trump and the First Lady made the visit a couple of weeks back to the Royal Palace. This was very similar to the astute Trump observer, to the same sort of visit that the president had with the Queen some years ago. What really took place there, and why is this so important? Your mic is muted, sir. Thank you.
Sorry. I think it was a reiteration of the statement that he made by doing the world capitulation tour back in 2017. I think it was just a reinforcement of exactly his position in the world and the royalty's position in the world relative to each other. To me, that's exactly what he was doing. And the other part is that yesterday, I think the UK put in they voted in universal ID for in the UK, which, if that's true, that's a really bad thing. That's going down the communism path. I really like what General Flynn said this morning on the call. We were with him this morning, and I really liked what he said. It's like the creeping communism is the greatest threat that this country faces, and it's an internal threat, not coming from outside anymore. It's being infiltrated at every level of government, from the top all the way to the bottom and local governments, and is the biggest threat that we need to face and be aware of at this point, which I totally agree with. And so anyway, that was short, but I think that was the British part was a reiteration of Trump's stance with regard to the monarchy.
Yes. Well, thank you. As Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi spoke about before, the optics of the president's role really across this globe, and that feeds into that narrative as well. Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bossi, you care to weigh in on the UK moment with the president and the king? You're also muted. This has been the broadcast of audio issues from top to bottom, but thanks for hanging in there with us, our audience. You can always fast forward for anything that didn't come through properly, but the show goes on. This is important. These are war reports from a very important panel, because the bullets are coming to our neighborhood very soon. Go ahead, Ricardo. I'm sorry.
Thanks, John. Colonel Sellers is exactly right. It's the reiteration of that the capitulation tour. That's point number one. Point number two: the courtesy with which DJT treated the monarchy. Again, Colonel Sellers is on the money. This is very important because the Brits are deeply wedded to their monarchy, and with good cause. Despite all the things that we know about it, it's still the basis of the British Empire and the Commonwealth. So, whilst Trump was there, the courtesy and the compliments was a communication to the target audience in the UK that Trump is on the right side of this story. Now, why is that important? Because the Brits are so deeply asleep and still struggling. The demoralization process under which they are living is so appalling, and yet they haven't moved yet. It is just extraordinary. And so they have a particular mindset that while the Australians just want to rip the Band-Aid off, the Brits are asking questions like, what's Agenda 21? Where can I find something on Agenda 2030? Why are people concerned about our police wearing United Nations blue? They just can't see it. And so they have to be handled handled very gingerly for what's coming, because there's going to be a big shock to them. So that's a couple of points on that. The ID, the digital ID, is just part of that. The counterpoint to Trump's attendance at that magnificently opulent, grotesquely over the top dinner. It's if you're going to do something radical, there's an old was it yes Prime Minister, that's where Jim Hacker, the Prime Minister, had a choice. He could say something radical and have a new course of action for the country, or same old and not do anything. And the TV producer who was producing the show, producing his piece to camera for the people, said, well, if you're going to do something very exciting and radical, make sure you have very, very wood paneled desk, that sort of thing. And if you're going to do more of the same, make sure you've got a high energy wallpaper to make it look like you're new. Well, this was the first option. The setting was very staid, because we know what's going to come, and they're going to need to gently be moved from one point to the next.
All right, thank you very much. Michael, Jacob, same question. We're on the UK. Its significance of that meeting.
Yeah, I think it's like the other gentleman we're talking about. It's a continuation of the capitulation tour Trump did in his first administration. But this one is basically highlighting how King Charles and the UK government at this point has been allowing the Muslim invasion. And I think he kind of pointed that out quite well with London, and how it's basically becoming Islamist, and they're letting Sharia law take over and so forth. So it's basically pointing that out to all of Europe, that it's coming to a head. And like Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo was talking about, Bosley was talking about, it is very, very hard for the people of the UK to overcome their conditioning, all right? And because they were conditioned for a very long time, not to get upset. Of course, as a lot of us have seen, once they get a little alcohol in them, they basically open up, but they're very, very conditioned. So we're going to see that, change pretty soon. We've seen revolutions throughout Europe, civil wars and so forth, when the monarchy gets a little bit out of control. I think we're going to see that. I think the government and the monarchy is basically going to fall in the UK at some point.
Good. Let's bring it on. London's unrecognizable. Some of the images and footage I've seen online due to the Islamic takeover is really what it is. Thank you, Mike. Derek Jonhson, same subject, UK and the president's visit.
Yeah, same thing what Jaco just said. Continuation from what you've seen. I mean, it's still theater, but the real part's obviously the target audience for the UK. President Trump signed a presidential memoranda September the 18th. This everything correlates. It's funny how all this stuff correlates once you do see the bigger picture, the broad spectrum. Once the target audience wants to look at that, but like the memoranda on the 18th. This was after what people in America saw with the Charlie Kirk thing. and President Trump signing a memorandum with the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland to do with artificial intelligence and all different things, securing 6G. We've already, we were talking about 5G way back 2 years ago. Now we're talking about 6G. All right, so there's a lot of things that's going on in different variables, but President Trump also. What's kind of been quiet lately is the crypto talk and all of your currency talk. That's kind of really gotten real hush hush, real quiet. But all these nations, the Indo-Pacific Agreement was talking about we're going to be independent on their own, and President Trump reiterated this again, that every nation will be acting on your own, and with the tariffs and all these things. So that's another key point. But the show It's All Theater, which I thought was it's a random, but it's a kind of a fun one, because the target audience that can sink their teeth into something, to want to go dig deep and read about laws and orders, is Marine One. So Marine One had to make an emergency landing over there, right? Well, there's no way President Trump will be on the old Marine One. We already know that the new Marine Ones are there. Dan Scavino is one of his right-hand guys, and he just posted the new Marine One landing the other day, taking off and landing. So the old Marine One was the one seeing President Trump getting on it, going to the Charlie Kirk funeral with no casket, right? And then emergency landing. Let me tell you something. I know it sounds braggadocious sometimes, but I've been to Mar-a-Lago, been to Trump Doral, been to Trump International, I've been to some other exquisite places. President Trump rolls around in his own aircraft with Rolls-Royce engines. All right, I can tell you right now that man would not be rolling around in no old Marine One if there was a new option on the table, which there is and there are. So little things like that can show that all this stuff is theater. So this has all been recorded. It's all pre-planned. And then him walking in front of the king and things of that nature, and the king sitting there. I thought it was hilarious, like when you know what's going on, you see the king like looking over his shoulder. I mean, you can't get any more awesome than that, to know what is actually going on in a big, and then how it trickles all the way down. But it's for humanity. Right, we keep saying this all the time, and as everybody on the board said, same thing with Christians. It's all of us Christians, but also especially military, that'll do all the fighting for everybody around the world, no matter what you look like, who you are, where you come from, ethnicity, nationality, whatever you are. So this is that bigger picture showing that the whole world, the capitulations, as Jaco just said again, all these world leaders, all these leaders, the military, we're all an alliance, taking down the deep state and their global alliance.
Great points, and I am going to touch on, as we wrap up after the last question, about the funeral with no casket. We'll come around to that in a moment. Thank you, Derek. So let's, Brad Wozni, if you want to weigh in on the UK and the significance of the visit with the president.
Sure, and I'll just be quick because I was here while that was going on. So
We've got to get the volume up. This is almost inaudible completely. We need volume.
how are we doing now, Jessica?
Okay, much better. We got the thunder, but we need the volume. You're good. This is as good as it's going to get. Continue, sir.
Usually you get the thunder from down under, but I guess,
Whoops, now he's frozen. Okay, you're freed up, Brad. Go ahead, sir.
you get the thunder from down under, but everything now from the Great White North. How am I? Can you read me?
Somewhat.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I'm over the target or it's just bad Wi-Fi where I am. What can I say? How is it coming now?
Keep going. Very
Okay,
good.
great.
Trump in the UK.
Well, I had a great joke about thunder from down under, but it didn't work out, I guess. But the TBS syndrome, the breakdown is amazing because I did witness it here. Because at every restaurant, every roadside diner, they're either playing baseball, football, hockey, or they're playing the CBC, which is the BBC for the UK, which is the CNN for America, right? And they play so much of the coronation, whatever was designated, and they were very, very nice about the visit of President Trump and the King. So in a Commonwealth country like this, not a country, but Commonwealth, right? People are watching Charles have a lot of fun with Trump. So they've got that visual memory to break down the TDS syndrome that everybody's had about Trump and tariffs and all that type of thing. So I think it worked swimmingly and beautifully, and they replayed it for a week. Certain clips of that.
Yes.
Trump in carriage with Charles. Right? They played it on the CBC, these clips. And then the dinner and all the laughter and the fun and the YMCA I saw several times over a couple of days at different places I was stopping to get gas or whatever. And the YMCA, the comms are incredible. So they did a fantastic job with that. And then the final thing I'll just say is, President Trump gave the nod to the 51st state about being part of the Golden Dome today in front of all those generals and admirals. Oh, even Canada called. They want to be part of this. I said, it's this easy. Be 51st state. And they'll have all their security, and that's what they should do. And then he continued on. So all this is still being woven through for the world to see everywhere. And I think enough has been said with regards to the UK visit. It was beautifully done, in my opinion. And with what we saw that Sheila and Mike put out on their show with regards to Trump calling everybody in, saying he is the Western king and the president of the United States for America, in those words, for America. I mean, come on. It is just remarkable what is going on. And hopefully that'll wake more people up. For those who are spiritually awake and been watching in your audience, they should be sharing. They should be sharing. It's amazing.
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, it is remarkable, and that campaign in the UK was very successful for the world to see. We got some good mileage out of that. We're gonna so we're gonna go back to the top of the panel with Colonel Sellers for our final question. Allow me, please, to set it up. I'm going to throw a few events, if you will, at an empty canvas here, and have each of our panel guests paint the picture for us. Here we go. A, New York City. The escalator stops. The teleprompter does not work, and the audio not set right in the UN hall. Even the First Lady, Melania, when the president came off the stage, asked her, "What did you think of my speech?" And she said, "I couldn't hear it." And she was sitting in the front rows. So the UN's sabotage of President Donald Trump, I was talking about boomerangs flying around before, here comes another one. The UN's sabotage of President Donald Trump backfired as Trump proceeded to not do a 15-minute speech, but a 45-minute speech, and neutered the United Nations, in my opinion, calling them out and different takes on the UN and many nations in this world. B, believe me, I'll encapsulate this into a question. B, Europe is not, so there's New York. That's what just took place, the UN issue. B, Europe is not what it used to be. We've been talking about that. Everyone's touched on Europe to some extent here. This is a very important part of the global shift here. Europe is not, in my opinion, what it used to be. Paris and London, for example, would be great examples, dangerous and unrecognizable. Many nations aligned with the expanding BRICS. So you've got 100 some odd nations now trying to essentially say, hey, we're not going to come aboard with President Donald Trump's parallel new economy and currency that he's building. So you've got many and European nations, many nations aligned with the expanding BRICS. Seems to me we may need to reevaluate who our allies are, as ideologies and political systems of many of our European friends, European nations, may not be lining up with the US dollar, not be lining up with the QFS system that we're heading into, the stable coin, the dollar being backed by gold en route. So I guess what I'm saying here is, and if you take a look at the streets of London, we'll use that as an example, many of our European nations seem to be resembling socialism, Marxism, and communist type policies. And if I'm wrong, this is a panel to correct me. And so, letter C, and again, I'll put all this together as a question. Peace in the Middle East. We have segments within our own movement that believe that, or are concerned that President Donald J. Trump is being controlled and owned by Israel. And Q said, save Israel for last. Are we at last? And what do you make of this speech between Netanyahu and the president? I got a lot too much packed in here. I'll boil it down in a minute. Having said that, you've got that kind of those dynamics going on with Europe. Where are they? Who are they? What direction are they moving in? And how are we going to play that? You've got the UN. It ties into it because who's Trump speaking to? The nations of the world. And he gave them a bitch slap down, did he not? Okay, so you've got that going on. You've got and then you've got Netanyahu, because that just happened today too. The speech between the president and Netanyahu, and the narrative that Trump is controlled by Israel. That's a lot to unpack, and that's where I'm going to go now to Colonel Sellers. To what do you make of all that? These are big, major events. The speech to the UN, the shift in European policy, and how it's playing out on their streets. And then and Israel has to be invoked because we're trying to get peace around the world. Well, you better handle that in the Middle East because it's been a hotbed forever. President Trump has already de-escalated and ended 7 or 8 wars. That's a lot of stuff. I wish I could have comprised this a little more neatly for you, but make of that what you will, Colonel Sellers. Give us any feedback on all of that, please.
Let me start with the B part first. Just interesting that it's just really very relevant, I believe. Just follow me for a second. This is going to go to Israel and Netanyahu. Larry Ellison recently acquired TikTok. Okay. TikTok goes from the CCP censorship basically to IDF control, because Larry Ellison is tied, and Oracle is tied very, very tightly with Israel. So Oracle, he's the founder of Oracle, which is a database cloud business site. So he owns all that. He's aligned with Skydance Media, Paramount Global, Paramount Pictures, TikTok. It's a with an Oracle Cloud Data partnership. Bloomberg, Southern California News Group. Things have happened with all of these areas. Tech and media. Yesterday, Netanyahu briefs influencers about the weaponization. Well, he called it the weapon of information, and how TikTok and Twitter are key weapons in fighting anti-Semitism, which really means anybody who talks bad about the Israelis is going to be labeled with hate speech and basically censored. So to me, that's the tie-in with Netanyahu. Netanyahu's not a good guy and never has been. Israel is not our friend and never has been. I mean, I think that's all in the background there. Whatever all those things that Netanyahu's saying, I mean, every once in a while he kind of sucks up to Trump once in a while, mostly for optics, I believe. But I mean, all of this is nefarious in my mind, and it's about control of the media and the narrative. All right. And I don't have as much to say on the New York thing, except that who in the hell didn't think, as soon as the elevator stopped, as soon as all those things broke down, the teleprompter, what American did not sabotage? It's so obvious. I mean, you can't get by it. And he's too smart to be made to look bad, because he is 10 steps ahead of these fools. And he always is 10 steps ahead of these guys. They always underrate him, and he comes out smelling like a rose because he took basically a shit sandwich that they handed him and turned it into a beautiful omelet from the Ritz. So, so that's what I think it is. I think that they underestimate him completely, always, all the time. And I think he does his homework well enough to be able to have, courses of action that he can go one way or the other way, depending on what situation happens. and he's thought it out well enough that he's going to come out smelling pretty good.
Well, two quick comments. I'll take the omelet. And second is great analysis
Hey,
because
I did have one more
yes,
comment though, John.
sure,
And
please.
it just struck me because I was listening to when General Flynn talked today. He talked a whole lot about basically a bloated officer class in the U.S. military. I mean, just this is what I'm thinking. They got 800 generals and admirals to that conference at Quantico. 800. That's down about 300 from the 300 that from the 300 others that got fired over the last 3 years, either relieved from command. Um, that includes Navy, Air Force, and Army, and probably Marine. So we've lost, and Derek knows this because Derek tracks it. We've lost around 300 or so in the last 3 years. So now there's 800 more. Sometimes some of them are yahoos that sit down in that auditorium, and then they get their ass chewed by the president, and then they get to have their ass chewed again by Pete Hegseth. I don't think all 800 of those guys are going to walk out of there with a job, is my point. And my point about maybe that was an ambush on them by the administration to point out the bloatedness of the military leadership at the higher levels. Because, just for an example, and Mike Flynn put this out today. He goes, just an example of the bloatedness of the defense establishment, what we have. We went from 4 undersecretaries of defense in 2001 at the time of 9/11. We have 24 undersecretaries of defense now. Every one of those guys has a bloated staff. He's got multiple agencies that are under them working it. So, and one of the other things he's done is that since 9/11, the government, I'm saying defense, is part of the U.S. government. The U.S. government has quintupled in size since 9/11, 2001. Explain that to me.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe
well, you've raised some great
today.
Yes.
Know that.
Good. Yes. Thanks for sharing with us some of General Flynn's viewpoints and certainly yours. You've raised some remarkable issues, and let's not hold anything back, guys, gentlemen. Repeat, Colonel Sellers, one more time your stance and position on those short, pointed words on Israel and America. Let's get that out there very clear. You stated before.
Israel is out for itself. Okay, it always has been, always will be, and that's part of the infiltration into this country. How many congressmen and senators have dual citizenship with Israel? Way too damn many. It's in the 90% range. And I've never believed in dual citizenship. You can't have allegiance to two masters at the same time. And I think this relationship with Israel and us having to run to their defense every single time is not good. And it's only to Israel's benefit, not this country's.
Is President Trump being duped and being the puppet for Israel as people within our movement state?
I don't think so. I honestly don't think so, because he's smarter than that. Let Netanyahu make his ridiculous comments and all this stuff, because we know which side Netanyahu's on. Trump is I think he's more than capable of understanding what's going on with it and handling himself and his, at least his close staff on how to handle this thing.
Thank you very much. Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi, I'll spend 10 seconds reframing the issues at hand here. We talked about the impact of the United Nations, its significance. We're talking about this shift in European policy, looking more like Marxists and communists, and their relationship with us moving forward. How's that going to play out? And ending with Bibi and the president. And let's not hold anything back, gentlemen, in terms of countering the narrative, if you believe it to be a counter narrative, about President Trump being owned and controlled by Israel.
Oh, sorry. Okay, you said hold nothing back. Here we go. This being a
That's
military
right.
panel, I'd like to spend a couple of seconds on the 800 assholes sitting in Quantico. All of us know exactly why we are where we are. Now, most men, I don't know about women, when I speak about women, I talk about men. We joined the army for a couple of reasons. One, the adventure, to volunteer for hazardous service, to test ourselves against the world. That's what men are designed to do. We don't give a shit about what someone says about us. We care deeply about what we know we can do. That's why a ribbon is so important. It's not an ego thing to say, I have done it. I have tested myself against the toughest thing there is that I think it's important. I don't care what you think is important. And I'm okay with that now. I've done it. I've proved it to myself. So that's the first point. Now, a lot of people do that. Some people join up because, I don't know, patriotism. Yeah, there's a big part of why I joined up. That service to the country, as well as that element of danger and threat to my life. Hey, if I'm not being threatened, I'm bored. I'm useless. I'm absolutely useless, and my commanders know they give Bosie something hard to do where it's dangerous. Otherwise, he's going to be a monumental pimple on your bum. That's just me. But other people do that. Other people do it because it's a paycheck. Other people do it for a whole bunch of reasons. Now, when you get in, and everyone around this table knows this, you start off and you're full of fight and vim and vigor. You want to do what you want to do, and then you start getting comfortable. And there's nothing more dangerous than a comfortable soldier. And there's nothing more dangerous than a comfortable officer, because officers control massive lives. They have lives in their hands. And I'm going to mention a couple of names here because I've been following this in the US and it's disgusting. And the American leadership, military leadership, for whom I have great respect, I've said this a million times, but God almighty, you people are in big trouble. Two people, Gunnery Sergeant Aaron Michael Kennefick, who was left to die back in 16 years ago in Ganagal village in the Kunar province because some fucking idiot in the ops center didn't know his job. And then the people in charge of that guy who left him there unprepared, unqualified to bring in the fire support that those guys needed, 5 of them died, they started covering their backsides all the way up the chain of command up to some general. And that's how it works, because my God, you cannot reveal yourself. Let the men die because they're cheap. They're expendable. There's 3 things you can waste in the military. It's paper, time, and soldiers. And it's been like that since Cain killed Abel. And they did that. The other one is a USAF Technical Sergeant, John A. Chapman. His treatment with his Medal of Honor and the Medal of Honor organization, people should be charged. The lies coming out of the senior leadership of the military. Now, having said all of that, that meeting at Quantico had a couple of parts. One, we've spoken about the optics, so President can tell the generals, and Pete Hegseth does his bit. But I can tell you, behind the scenes, there's some other very, very pointed moments being had. Now, there's a Marvel comic hero called Deadpool who wears a red outfit, so when he gets shot, you can't see the blood. And he makes the comment that his bad guys have to wear brown corduroy trousers. And I bet you there's a bunch of generals and admirals who are happy they were wearing brown corduroy trousers because they got the message. Now, a whole bunch have been removed, as Chuck said, and they're dead right. Hundreds have gone. But there's a whole bunch more in there, and they know that they are being watched every minute of every fucking day. You want to see AI optimized for honesty? Watch this. Every time you fart, General, we're going to know where you are and what you were thinking at the time. They are now shitting themselves. And I apologize for the language, but I've had a gutful of this shit. Every one of those generals, and not all of them are bad. There's some very good men and women in there, but you can't sack everybody because the machine's got to roll on. So what do? You sack the worst, then you get the crooked ones who are gutless wonders, as we call in Australia, gutless poofters, which they are once you get to above. And they're being told, we're watching you. Put one step out of line, and you're going to evaporate. They know it. They're terrified. They should be terrified. They have betrayed themselves, their families, their wives, their children, their husbands, their country. For what? A bigger office? Another star on their shoulder? See, they're the worst type. They're the worst of the worst. So I just wanted to get that out there so people know that of those generals, you will see really good performance. Not because they're good men and women, because they're not. They are loathsome grubs who just like surrounding themselves with sycophants. I'm lucky I made it to Lieutenant Colonel. I have no clue how I made it to Lieutenant Colonel. I shouldn't have got that far because, my God, I'm a tough guy to have under your command. I really am. I'll work my ass off for you. I will break my back for you. But you took one step out of line. As I told, and I'll say this, Commander Special Ops, we've been doing this major plan, significant growth to the Special Ops organization, which we managed to win against all odds. Other corps were fighting for one soldier here, one soldier there, and we wanted 1,000 extra, and that's nothing in the US. But in the Australian military, wow, that's huge. We wanted a whole new regiment. Now, my boss wasn't told about the presentation until the last minute. My immediate boss, the lieutenant colonel, because I was a major at the time, he was sent on a course, so they left me to do the work, thinking he won't be able to do it. Two and a half months, one day off. On one celebrity evening, I got into bed at 4 in the morning. I was up at 5 in the morning, an hour's sleep, and back for another 22 hour day for 2.5 months. I pulled it off. They set me up to fail. I won. I don't usually blow my own trumpet, but fuck it, I'm going to do it this time. We won that regiment, 2nd Commando Regiment. That's why we've got it. We had crooked generals up there who had done deals with the minister, who were trying to get contracts for V-22s and everything else that was going to distort the budget. And good old, stupid Bosie, who was straight as a fucking arrow. Well, militarily, as far as women are concerned, I was bloody terrible. Separate story. I'll do my confession to God on that later. But as far as the military was concerned, I wasn't buying any bullshit. Oh, you can put some of these in, Rick. No, I can't because it'll distort the budget. And all of a sudden, then other people will miss out. So I've done this in a very economical way. So we got the regiment, but I was set up to fail because these bastards wanted to do a deal with the military-industrial complex. That's what you're dealing with these generals. That's all they are. So the big message for everybody listening to this, that 800 generals, apart from the optics for the blah, 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 all those guys, they are now shitting themselves. They know that they're being watched 24/7. AI, you want AI, you want to track these people on everything they do. They now know, and it's been revealed to them, they now know that they're in trouble. They do their job or they're going to evaporate. So I just wanted to get that off my liver because, my God, it is galling to sit here as an officer who has sacrificed so much, like everyone around this table. And it is galling to watch the men and women that have sacrificed so much at the behest of these frauds, these absolute high-ranking frauds who expect so much for us and deliver nothing because they have a secret society or they made an oath to them. No, those days are done, and the US can be proud now that DJT and people like Mike Flynn are in charge, and they're going to grip these people up. And that was the purpose of that meeting. Yeah, there were some subordinate issues there. Now, having done the soldierly bit and have a spit at the generals, and my God, I can't wait to see our generals in orange jumpsuits, reduced to the rank of private, where we've got Chief of Army, Navy, Air Force, chipping weeds at the recruit training battalions. So every digger that walks past knows that if they fuck up, that's where they're going to end up. Doesn't matter how important they think they are. That's point number one. Now, to your more moderate question, John, and I'm sorry for taking so much time. I know we're well over time. You want to know about New York, about BRICS, about Damascus, and Israel last. Let me wrap it up for you. There is nothing new under the sun. Ephesians. There is nothing new under the sun. What we are seeing is a reset of the global control structure, like not dissimilar to the Treaties of Westphalia. The Treaties of Westphalia ended the 30 years war between the Catholics and the Protestants, and this is a really sort of dumbed down version of it. 30 years war, 1618 to 1648. And they were fought along religious grounds. And after 8 million people died, they finally decided, you know what, let's draw the borders so we have our national boundaries and you can take care of yourselves. And that's what's actually happening. It was a complete reordering of the global system. That's what we're seeing now. Now, the New York bit, let me put it all together for you. The New York bit. This was, whether it was white hat or black hat, makes no difference. Trump always turns lemons into lemonade. Always. In fact, he turns lemons into a champagne cocktail. How talented this guy is. It revealed the pettiness of the people of the anti-Trumpers, the absolute pettiness. Stop the elevator. And this is schoolyard stuff. The auto prompter didn't work, all that sort of stuff, and he turned it around as he always does. BRICS, reordering of the global system. Now, the fact that there's an opposition to Trump's plan is brilliant, because guess what, folks? The planet is not going to fall under the spell of kumbaya. You know, peace and goodwill is not going to break out just because we've got this. Now, if they want to grow their countries their way, fill your boots, but understand this. There is a group of nations out there, the United States and Australia, and I'm going to make sure we are right alongside you. We are best ally. We're going to make sure this planet runs the right way, and we're not going to take shit from ridiculous philosophies, cultures, or nations ever again. Now, it's not our problem to solve your problem. That's your problem. We're good. You want to come to us because we're better than you are by every metric. So you have to sort out your own countries. You have to sort out your own religions. You have to sort out your own economies. And so it's not going to be like as the DJT runs the planet. Not going to happen. They have to run their countries. But if you step out of line, watch this space, because your nonsense is no longer going to be tolerated. So this realignment of the international order is important. Israel last. Israel have been the Khazarian mafia. They have been the slave masters for humanity for eons. They are literally the slave masters. And do your research, you'll understand what I mean. And they're last because this is the last gasp of evil in human form coming out of not the Jews. So this is not anti-Semitic. This is a structure designed to control the planet. That's why they have to be last. Everything's been stripped away from them, and they're sitting there like the last one to go. And when it falls down, we can start moving on with the future of this planet, which is going to be a whole lot better than it was. But it doesn't mean there isn't a lot of hard work to be done by good, straight, honest, hard-working people who are ready to sacrifice everything. And as your Declaration of Independence says, our lives, our wealth, and our sacred honor, those three demands still exist. And if we want to win and we want to change the country and change the planet for something better for the next 1,000 years, that's what every man, woman, and child on this planet has to do. Thank you for your indulgence.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo. I want to ask you a closing out question here. When Q said save Israel for last, are we at last? Or are we approaching last?
Yeah, we are. We are. It's still going to play out because, once again, concentration camp victims couldn't eat a steak sandwich straight after they were liberated. They had to be fed gruel initially, so their digestive system to do it. And it's an apt analogy. The target audience will need time. The arrests will come, but they'll be spaced out. It'll be quickish, but it'll be spaced out so they can actually digest what they're being told emotionally and psychologically. It'll accelerate as it takes off, as it progresses. But yeah, we're here. It's Comey. This is it. This is the thin edge of the wedge. The thing's going to crack open. Watch the show, folks, and get on your knees and pray to the God of your childhood that you're alive to see it.
Thank you very much. And just you're in the hammer of hell mode. Let's get this on the record, Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo. Israel, friend or foe? Is Trump controlled by Bibi Netanyahu and that system? Yes or no?
No,
rhetorical.
Absolutely.
I get it.
Not friend, definitely foe, have been since forever. They are the world's best victims all the time. Everything that comes out of Israel, not the people, Israel, the organization, has been a lie. The 6 million Jews in World War II, bullshit. That number was trotted out 20 years earlier, and 20 years earlier, and 20 years earlier, and 20 years earlier. And they just know that people will forget. We've got the what's it called? The brain capacity of a goldfish. We'll forget in 2 seconds what's occurred, and we told a different lie at the same time, or the same lie differently. No, Israel has always been nothing but a pimple on the arse of progress. The Bible, okay, you want it out there? The Bible, the Old Testament, is God's word in there? Absolutely yes, because God was never absent us. But a lot of it, the Old Testament, Talmud, Babylonian religion, and the Bible is actually the story of one tribe, not of Israel, of one tribe that was not particularly powerful. That's all it is. It's a story of one tribe. You don't believe me? Don't care. Read the Naked Bible by Mauro Biglino, in Italian. Mauro Biglino, the Naked Bible. Have a read of it with an open mind, because you're going to need an open mind to get through this, folks. Otherwise, you'll go fucking spare. I'm telling you. Mauro Biglino is an interlinear translator. It's an interlinear translator of the Bible, meaning he goes to the etymology of every word and translates it without metaphor, but exactly as written. And when you read the Bible as it was written, not with metaphor and Now, Elohim is a plural word, not a singular word. So the great one's not God. It never mentions monotheistic God. How's that for a shock, folks? And I know I'm going to break some hearts here, but I don't much care. We've got a planet to save and lots of people to save with it. Does God exist? Absolutely. Is Jesus Christ the man? You bet. So pray through Christ to the God he prayed to at Gethsemane. The rest is commentary. The Bible is a book about one of the tribes. That's it. And so read the Naked Bible and see if you can get through that, because this is going to hurt everybody. I've taken the piss out of the Muslims, the Jews, the Hindus, the Buddhists, everybody, and so I should. But the Christians, we've got some waking up to do as well, because we have been led down the garden path in the worst possible way, and they have used good people to destroy themselves. So every Baptist minister in Louisiana, all the way through the Pope, you've done more damage to Christ's message than any enemy ever has done. Trump is not controlled by Israel. Never has been. Are you kidding me? This guy became a billionaire in the New York real estate market. Do you think that guy is so dumb? You're kidding me. No, he's good. He's fine. I backed him back at when he first came to prominence, and I haven't regretted it for one moment.
Thank you, Lieutenant Colonel. And folks, we are approaching last. Michael Jaco, 10 seconds, I'll reframe the narrative here. United Nations, the impact of that speech, the European Union, how that is shifting their political persuasions and their allegiances, and Israel and Trump. Take it away, Mike.
Yeah, so President Trump came into the UN and he, like we've discussed, escalator didn't work and the teleprompter didn't work. Then he went on to talk about how he had bid for a contract to, upgrade the UN. And he said it was like marble floors. You have like crappy floors now. He was going to do it for $500 million. And so then he goes on to talk about how with $2.5 billion later, it's still crappy. It's still falling apart, like we all just talked about. So why did he go in that vent? What's he trying to expose? He's trying to expose the money laundering, basically the money going in the wrong directions. Hundreds of billions of dollars spent bringing illegal aliens to Europe and America. Hundreds of billions that the UN used to do that. And then he chastised the Europeans for allowing one generation to basically take down thousands of years of culture. All right. And then for Israel, save for last, they're not our friend. They're definitely our foe. They were never supposed to even be in Israel. They were going to put them in Africa. They couldn't find a place for them. So they're like, oh, let's put them in there because Palestinians won't resist. Let's put them in there. And that's why they're there. So Israel, with President Trump just recently, with Netanyahu, was given a 20-point plan, how he's going to have peace in the Middle East. All it has to do, we have to have the Hamas to agree to it. I don't know how that's going to happen. But anyway, he's basically pushing everybody into a corner. Everybody's being pushed into a corner. Yeah. The same with Zelensky and with Europe, NATO. He's like, I'm not going to put any more money into, because hundreds of billions of dollars have already gone into Ukraine. I'm not going to waste any more money. If the Europeans want to buy our military gear and give it to Ukraine, that's up to them, but we're not going to put any more money over there. So he's basically putting people into a box, and they're going to be their own demise now. So Europe is just disintegrating itself until the Europeans basically stand up and say enough of this, and they have to push back, like all of us have. Now, Netanyahu even pushed back on those of us in this circle and patriots in other circles when he said that he's pretty much going to come after us because we're anti-Semites or something, which is crazy. So he's basically drawn another battle line to come after patriots. How insane is this? Definitely not a person that America should be friends with. So that's my take on that.
Well, brilliant analysis, and boy, October is upon us, and November shortly thereafter. Last is approaching. Derek Jonhson, same question on this collective narrative of UN, EU, and Israel.
Well, first off, President Trump is not controlled. So there's the theater portion and the distraction portion. Again, the 45-47, and then what really took place with what is actually going on. That's transpiring that people are the target audience is seeing basically. So like the United Nations, I'll start with that. The whole reshift of the deep state, taking away all their toys, all the things that they've been using all these years. Like when President Trump talks about NATO, how he brought them from 2% to 5%. I mean, there was at one point, I think, when I was in college, I did a paper on this years ago that we paid the United States of America paid 98% of the defense budget for NATO. So this has been going on. That was the deep state's quote unquote diplomacy. They did all these executive orders. They had all these treaties, all these different things that was their quote unquote diplomacy. What were they doing in the background? See, and this is also why the target audience also has to pay attention. Is because everybody listening, you need to know exactly at the end of the day, whatever you can do with your brain to feed your brain the knowledge. Knowledge is not power. It's the application of knowledge is power. So you need to know this as well, because you got to hold your leaders accountable moving forward. And that's what happened all these years is the deep state. They were allowed to do whatever they want, whenever they wanted, and they built their own alliance, their own everything. The money laundering, as Jaco just talked about, Ukraine, one of the hottest pots for money laundering. There's all these different things that President Trump's having to do, clean up from the quote unquote diplomacy that we've all lived under all our lives. But we knew about, and we've been yelling it for years, everybody in their own entities, and it's finally bubbled up to where we are now. Israel, for the target audience sake, the Israel of the Bible and the Israel of the target audience, not the same. All right, and like the Naked Bible, and I've got two friends that I just put them together a couple weeks ago, and my dad got to watch them talk, and about the 12 tribes of Judah. Israel's not the same Israel. The body of Christ is right here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a whole big deep dive that you have to go down. And it's like Lieutenant Colonel said, there's a few things you can go read, look at, but you got to do what? Divorce your emotions and your feelings and see the bigger picture. And is God real? Yes. Is Jesus Christ real? Yes. It's just not what you've been taught your whole life. So there's that. Then what President Trump does for the target audience, whether you want to believe in the theater or whatever, but is the spotlight. Jaco just said the box, which is a great example as well. Put them in the box, put them in the spotlight. He puts all these people in the spotlight. It's like, all right, we got you. You're cornered. And this whole 45-47 was made possible by having that power and all the good generals, not the central casting and the TV generals, as President Trump likes to call them. And all of us know right here, if we could say our choice words, what he would call them, we know what he would call them. For the lighter terms, it would be called shitbag. That's what we call in the military, the people who are not wanting to do what they're supposed to be doing. Then you have your Abraham Accords. All right, those are also spotlights. That's putting spotlight on the leaders, putting those leaders in boxes and saying, we're watching you. You better walk a mighty fine line because there's a new sheriff in town, and he's not just in town. He's not in a city. He's not in a state. He's the sheriff of the world. So watch your step. Executive orders like Yemen. President Trump, he just said, I've ended 7 wars, and he just added to it. He said, matter of fact, I believe it's 8 now, 8 wars in 8 months. Who's ever done that? He said they're probably going to give the Nobel Peace Prize to somebody else, not me. But 8 wars. Guess where they all were, ladies and gentlemen? Executive orders by the who? The deep state. And they were dragging all this crap out for what? Money. Money, money, money. And that's why he said we're not the Department of War for war's sake. We're going to be the Department of War for strategic sake and staying on top of this. But he said we're not going to be all about the money. He's alluding to the deep state. He's alluding to all these executive orders, all these proclamations that the deep state made way back. Israel, even though there's not a national emergency or an executive order with them, we all know that what Obama was doing with Israel, we know what Bush was doing with Israel. We know what all these leaders have done with Israel. It's once you know, and you can't unknow. So there's that. And then for the theater's sake, to show people that President Trump's not controlled, go back to, again, The Army saying we're going to spend $572 million training our combat brigades for underground warfare. Then they showed a war start October the 7th, 2023. Now, the nations that were in what the target audience knows as Israel can tell you a lot about this is not what people think it is. Romania, Bulgaria, Argentina, Colombia, New Zealand, Australia, Belgium, Hungary, United States, Russia, Ukraine. Russia and Ukraine were in Israel within October the 7th to the 14th. All these nations, military aircraft were in that nation in 1 week's time. So that could show people. Also, tying in the what was already planned, we have war colleges in the United States teaching our officers. Way back in 2019, there's a publication out, Shaping the Deep Fight, the Operational Conflict, the Subterranean Warfare, which shows that $572 million, all right, Canadian defense, $572 million, and it says we stand with Israel and the United States. But they're talking about the bigger picture. They're not talking about what we're talking about. So that's why people have to understand that the separation of Netanyahu and the separation of the people of Israel and the people, the good people that they're trying to prevent from either becoming hostage or being killed with what's going on with the warfare. And they told everybody when that quote unquote war started, right? They told everybody in November and December 2023 that the war has now gone where? To the tunnels, subterranean warfare. And then just to put the cherry on top, President Trump, to show he's not in control, he tells everybody, we are not paying for it anymore. We are also not fighting the world's wars anymore, but he's cleaning up the deep state and he's cleaning up the quote unquote diplomacy to prove it. In August 2020, the Defense Intelligence Agency put out a publication for Iran, and it talks about underground tunnels, and it brings in North Korea as well. Matter of fact, while we're on that, to show that President Donald John Trump is not controlled, has anybody seen the little fat boy lately? Has anybody seen Kim Jong-un? What is he doing? I'm pretty sure Kim Jong-un is hoarding all the Twinkies that RFK is going to take away in the health organization, right? I'm pretty sure that's what. Ain't nobody heard from Kim Jong-un anymore. Remember that nuclear war that he was going to start because of that temperament that President Trump had? Where's the little fat boy? Ain't nobody seen the little fat boy. All right, so that right there, if you want to look at it in real time, Netanyahu, if you want to look at it in real time, Netanyahu's going to look at the little fat boy going, oh, little fat boy disappeared. We ain't heard from him anymore. So Netanyahu, if he was going to be used as a fall guy or a pawn to turn and be a quote unquote good guy, which I don't think they're going to do, but if they did do that, he's looking at the little fat boy going, I don't think I want to be that. All right, so that right there, August 2020, and then what? You had Johnson and Johnson. This is how this all ties in. This is so crazy. President Trump hammered Big Farm. He hammered opioids. People think, what has that got to do with Israel? Well, Oklahoma, state of Oklahoma, Johnson and Johnson lost a court case in the state of Oklahoma in August 2020. The same time this publication comes out, they were forced to pay $572 million. Now, that is a random number to pull out of my cowboy hat here like a magician with a white rabbit. That's a random number, right? Now, go back to that Army publication way back here in May 2019. Then go back to those military articles way back here in 2018. What's the number the Army's spending for the 26 to 31 brigades? $572 million. President Donald John Trump is not controlled by any stretch of the margin.
Thank you, Derek Jonhson. And we went from Rocket Man to the fat man with Twinkies. Let's let that be duly noted. But great analysis, Derek. Thank you very much. You've got an incredible ability of connecting dots for quite some time from quite a few different important places. I think we're driving the point home. Israel for last is upon us. Brad, thanks for your patience. Again, United Nations move by the president, European Union's position in the world, and Israel and Trump. Take it away, sir.
Yeah, this will be very brief, John. Amazing points stated as always here with these men. Is that when you look at Bibi, who's been around for I don't know how many decades running it, didn't he lock down his country and force vaccinate his entire population 4, 5, 6, 7 fucking times? Pardon the Northern Territory F-bomb here. Yes, he did. And that is just in the last few years, right? So anybody can look at that who can sit there and go, wait a second, we have crimes against humanity. And then Geneva Conventions and Nuremberg, he could just right there, just looking at what he did to his own fellow countrymen and women. There you are. And then when we look at the spectacle, which continues to be played out for the world, that Trump and the White Hat Alliance are leveraging on people to discuss the UK, can beat the UNGA over the head like a dead horse. But the great part of all of this happening for world media news is they can't resist not reporting on it. Even if for some of them might be around the world that aren't taken over by the White Hats in the background and whatnot, they have to. These are monumental moments that they must be there for and record and get out to the world, because it's just a typical thing. The UK, the Alaska meeting with Putin, what just happened today that we saw the very last financial aid of the U.S. government, as well, by the way, with the report that $1 trillion is being spent in 2026 just for the U.S. military alone. Then he said 17 trillion came in. So all the world is watching that as well. $17 trillion came in on tariffs. Biden couldn't even get 1 trillion, right? So he's playing it out for everybody. He talks about the auto, and these are fantastic spectacles that, and they'll continue to play out. And I encourage everybody.
Looks like we've lost Brad. Brad, are you with us? Yeah. Okay, we've got technical issues with Brad Rosny. If he surfaces back, we'll tap you one last time. There you are. Just that last sentence again, if you can, Brad. You cut out completely. Okay, we've got broadcasting issues with Brad. We're going to come back as a safety net before we wrap up in just a few moments the show and see if Brad's communications are working. I'm going to go in reverse on the panel now and go to Derek Jonhson, work our way all the way back to Colonel Sellers, and we'll wrap up this extended broadcast, but important broadcast, because October is a breath away, and the shit's going to hit the fan in October and November, as all things seem to be indicating. I've got, if you can, gentlemen, short answers here, 60 seconds each, okay? We'll go to, and then we'll wrap up the show. We'll go to Derek, and then we'll try and come back to Brad at the end. Two-part question, very simple. Big takeaways for the viewers, because I know they want an answer to this, and we've touched on it, but let's be very clear about it. So Derek, EBS and the bigger S, October, November, high probability, pretty much at the doorstep, yes or no?
I would say high probability for, but in a positive manner, not so much negative, just where it brings everybody to a phone, TV, they see everything they need to see, which would be just closure.
Thank you. And last question, Derek. You've mentioned you're becoming like Senator John Kennedy, the man of some interesting sound bites. You have the funeral with no casket. Let's give me 15 seconds. PSYOP, or is what we saw real? Simple.
It was all part of the operation. Whatever the revelation will be, I think that it's going to be part of that, bringing in the target audience because of what the subject matter is and was. But 100%, I mean, it's to this day on X and Facebook, the original footage is not censored for graphic content, and everything else you put up with even just a wrong kind of cut of blood gets graphic content. That tells you right there, straight up. But also the
Thank you.
visuals. Blood didn't stain, didn't saturate. Fake.
Yep. Thank you. And those that want to follow Derek, he's got extensive programming on this subject and on his official Facebook page. Those that want to dive deeper into Charlie Kirk's situation, that takes me to, it takes me, where does it take me? I don't know where I'm going. I'll just go to Michael Jaco. Michael, two closing questions. EBS, foregone conclusion in your mind, October, November, and the big arrests, yes or no?
Yeah, EBS, probably limited. I don't think it would be widespread, but could be targeted for certain areas. And I think that lots of arrests are going to be coming in probably end of October, like we're talking about November, even all the way into the beginning of next year, into the springtime.
Thank you. Again,
like Derek said, basically the Charlie Kirk thing, we've had great discussions on that. Pretty much PSYOP against the deep state, but trying to bring more people in to start to think for themselves, be critical thinkers, and be non-emotional. Derek does a really good job of doing that. So yeah, I highly recommend you do Derek's videos, and of course I got some really good ones on it too. So
excellent, thank you. And Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi, same two closing questions. Likelihood of EBS and arrest in October, November, and the no casket funeral of Charlie Kirk.
Chances are excellent, yes, for an EBS. The form, it might not be this global alarm bell, so it might be staged, it might be localized, but yes, it'll happen before the end of the year is my prognostication. And the Charlie Kirk event was purely theater with a good intent and a good outcome.
Thank you very much. Brad, we're going to test your audio out one last time. EBS, arrests, and Charlie Kirk, fact or fiction?
Yeah, definitely a fiction. But the fiction is a good break. And then, yeah, I think so as well. Like Michael said, I don't see it happening nationwide all of a sudden. Locking down.
Thank you very much. And closing out the show with Colonel Sellers, same question, EBS, arrests, Charlie Kirk.
EBS, yeah, I think it's finally looking like it's going to happen. And October, November sounds as good a time frame as any. The Charlie Kirk. Wait, what was the one before that?
Yeah, that was it. The arrest. Do you think the big arrest will be coming along with the EBS? This sort of two
I don't think
things.
I think it's going to be they're going to feed it out for the drama of it, and so they'll let you in. I don't know how you say it. Taste it for a while, and then take a break, and then the next one comes. It's not. I don't think it's going to be like a mass arrest. I think it's going to be private consumption publicly for a while until people get used to what's going on. Charlie Kirk, we were watching when it was happening, and we both looked, Michelle and I both looked at each other, PSYOP. But the one good thing about it is whether it happened or didn't happen, or if he was off before the show actually came on TV, the result was the same, and it was all good. They brought a lot of people together for the right reasons.
Yes, I agree. And again, to our viewers that want to, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on the Charlie Kirk issue because I've already addressed it in a few programs. Just wanted to get this panel on the record. Thank you all for doing that. Those that want to deep dive into it, Michael Jaco's platform, Derek Jonhson's. And to that point, we'll go around the horn real quick. Best place for people to find you, Derek?
Linktree, LINKTR.EE/1776 Nation. I mean, at this point, there's so many fraudulent scam accounts out there that the best place is my Linktree. And that if there's not a page on that Linktree, stay away from it.
Perfect. Thank you. Michael, best place for people to follow your work?
michaelkjaco.com. And great job, as usual, John. Fantastic show. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's fantastic because of you and the other panel members, but I appreciate it. And make sure you put the K in there, Michael K. Jaco, and you'll land on his platform. Thank you, Michael. Brad, best place for people to follow you, your podcast, and your work.
Yep. Thanks, John. The Sovereign Soul on Rumble. You'll see the channel, about 35,000. And then all the links to everything are there. And such an honor to be with all of you great men and your team again. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Lieutenant Colonel Ricardo Bosi, the best place to pick up your deep breadth of work that you have out there.
Sure. www. And you got to put the W's in, AustraliaOneParty.com, and go to the social media links there, because there are fake ones out there like everybody else. And thanks again, John, and thank you for your indulgence. The swear jar will be full tonight, I don't doubt.
Thank you very much. And closing out where we started with Colonel Sellers, as I recall, there may not be a platform, but rather than assume, is there a place people can follow you? If not, they can certainly follow you every month as you appear on this broadcast. But go ahead, sir.
Yes, and charles.sellers87@gmail.com.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank our esteemed panel. I will salute you on behalf of